Even though this key is a bit weird, I've seen weirder things. Can we still enter that map now? Not anymore. But when that level 3 color refreshes, there should still be a chance. Send me the coordinates. Just as the two were about to part ways, Shinmang suddenly called out to Dan, lowering his voice. Brother, do you remember the names of every slave in your train car? No. Why do you ask, Boss Mang? Earlier you told me that a survivor named Zhang Yiren told you this story. Normally, just calling them a survivor or a slave is enough. A specific name shouldn't have come up, right? Oh, that. Dan suddenly understood, then continued with a sigh. It's because that guy really left a deep impression on me. At first, he told me the village shook every night. Then, maybe his occupational habit kicked in. He started spinning tales about tons of monsters hiding underground, saying all sorts of panic-inducing things. I found it pretty interesting, like a movie plot, so I asked for his name. Are there really monsters underground? Of course not. My hunting radar already scanned the area. Not a single red dot showed up. On the plains of the zombie basin, Shinmeng stood alone on the flat ground, watching the Songlong train gradually disappear from sight. Then he turned to ask Xiao AI, "Did you record those coordinates?" "Recorded." I nodded without another word, just waving my hand to tell Biaozi to bring the guy to my car. Inside the train car, Zhang Yiren looked terrified. He slumped to the floor, his voice mixed with sobs. Boss, I really didn't write this script alone. The director bears a huge part of the blame too. We'll talk about that later. I waved him off, frowning. I paused for a moment before asking, "Your village shakes every night?" Yes, that's right. Since we didn't have a clock, we couldn't pinpoint the exact time, but the tremors basically happened at the same time every night. So you assumed there were monsters underground. Seeing that I wasn't bringing up the movie anymore, Zhang Yiren finally breathed a sigh of relief. He answered cautiously, if it were an earthquake, it wouldn't happen every single day at the exact same time. So I guess there was some terrifying monster hiding underground, and the tremors were just caused by its breathing. When the captain rescued me, I told him about this. Yeah, I nodded, saying nothing more. I was planning to go check it out anyway once the mining here was done. Dan couldn't detect anything, probably because his hunting radar's level wasn't high enough. If there really is a slumbering monster, I might just be able to score some good loot. I didn't dwell on it further. I turned to look at Zhang Yiren kneeling on the floor, giving him a half smile. Now, let's talk about your movie. I'm genuinely curious. Why did you guys shoot a movie like that? And what kind of plots do romance movies usually have? Well, this. Zhang Yiren looked up and said cautiously, usually, the people willing to watch romance movies are mostly female audiences. This demographic loves emotional conflicts. For example, misunderstandings that can't be resolved until death, or missing out on each other forever when it could have been avoided by just a hair. Silent sacrifices that go unnoticed, paying a massive price that means nothing in the other person's eyes, or being just one step away from making it work. Sounds all right. I suddenly burst out laughing, but a flash of murderous intent crossed my eyes. Just hearing about it gives me a headache. Drag him down. Kill them all. Understood. Biaozi coldly grabbed Zhang Yiren by the collar and dragged him out. Boss. Zhang Yiren was so terrified his legs gave out. He screamed in despair, "It really wasn't my fault. Back then, I was just trying to make a living. The market chose this genre. I was just following the market. All right then, I'll give you a chance to redeem yourself. Aren't those other guys your directors? I'll give you a few days to shoot a new movie. Remake this one into something I'd actually like to watch. If I like it, you live. Am I clear? Get out of here." After they were led away, I stretched out and leaned back in my chair, looking out the window. That previous movie really pissed me off, but in the apocalypse, the train needs some entertainment. Keeping a few guys around just to make movies isn't a bad idea. Plus, I can use them later to shoot promotional videos for the Hongqing train. It kills two birds with one stone. 3 days later, the Level 3 iron mine and the Level 4 crimson core magma mine were fully excavated. In the dead of night, the Hongqing train slowly started up and accelerated. The wind was howling. Our destination was the coordinates Dan had sent earlier. Riding the wind and fire wheels quickly ignited. From a distance, they looked exactly like Ghost Rider's motorcycle wheels, dozens of flaming wheels tearing across the plains. About an hour later, the train arrived smoothly at its destination. In the darkness, The ruined village ahead looked incredibly ordinary. Low walls, riddled with bullet holes, and heavily damaged doors. This place had been ransacked countless times by zombies and other trains. The fact that those guys managed to hide here for a whole year was nothing short of a miracle. Defense car number 7 opened. Zhang Yi jumped out of the train alone, carrying a refrigerator on his back, and rode a dirt bike speeding toward the village. As he approached, he hurled the refrigerator straight into the air. The members of Squad 1 and Squad 3 immediately tumbled out of the fridge. At first glance, it looked like just one person, but in the blink of an eye, the entire squad was fully assembled. Miaozi scrambled up, rubbing his aching head. He turned to Zhang Yi with an ugly expression. Do you think you're throwing a briefcase? Couldn't you just put the fridge on the ground and let us walk out ourselves? Why the hell did you throw it into the sky? Sorry, Zhang Yi muttered awkwardly. In my head, I pictured throwing the fridge into the air, and then everyone would fly out from the sky and land perfectly. It would have looked so badass. Badass, sure. But do you think we can fly? Biaozi glared at him, then tossed the briefcase in his hand into the air and swiftly slipped into his executioner mecha suit. Squad 1, listen up. Form an arrow formation and scout ahead. No one breaks off. Squad 3, provide fire support from the rear. To this day, Squad 3 still didn't have any close combat mecha suits. They only had the Leech fire support suit worn by the Squad 3 captain. After that, the group began to meticulously scout every corner of the village under the cover of darkness. Rumble. I frowned slightly, looking at the control screen. I just felt the tremor Zhang Yi mentioned, but the hunting radar isn't showing any targets nearby. My hunting radar is level 20. Any monster within a 20,000-meter radius should be clearly visible. That means if there really is a monster underground, it has to be beyond 20,000 meters. That's almost impossible. This is only a yellow zone. The highest level for a monster here is level 9 at most, and so far, I haven't even seen a level 9 zombie. The highest I've encountered is level 8. Even if it were a level 9 zombie, a single entity couldn't possibly cause such a massive disturbance from 20,000 meters deep. Tonight, the sky is clear and cloudless. Those words shouldn't normally go together, but as I looked up at the night sky, I couldn't find a more fitting description. There wasn't a single star in the sky. The light wasn't too dim, and there were no clouds. I could even see the faint outlines of distant clouds with my naked eye. The wind was also incredibly strong, not the kind of night breeze that soothes the soul, but a violent gale that felt like it was blowing straight into your soul. Just then, Biaozi's voice rang out in the train car. Reporting to Boss Mang, no abnormalities detected. No supplies either. Everything that could be taken from the village has been wiped clean. Returning to the train. Copy that. Since we couldn't find anything in the village, I decided to head straight underground. One of the transcendent effects of the resource radar is the ability to see the refresh time of fully excavated mines. But my radar couldn't detect that level 3 iron mine at all, so there was no way to know its refresh time. Buzz. The train plunged straight into the earth. The level 50 drill bit worked like a red-hot iron rod piercing through butter. The dirt and rocks instantly melted away. The descent was unbelievably smooth. Behind us was a long, newly carved tunnel with an extremely unstable structure that could collapse at any moment. I steered the train, continuing to dive deeper beneath the village. We had only gone about 200 meters, barely a scratch for the train, just getting started, when the very next moment. Beep beep, beep beep. An ear-piercing alarm blared throughout the train, more frantic than anything I had ever heard. On the hunting radar, thousands of red dots suddenly appeared at a depth of about 20,200 meters underground. More accurately, it was a massive space resembling a limestone cave, packed to the brim with countless zombies. My expression instantly changed. The train continued its descent, but I couldn't even see the edges of that cave space. The deeper we went, the denser the red dots on the radar became. Level 7 and Level 8 zombies appeared in droves, and even Level 9 zombies weren't rare. With just a glance, the entire edge of the radar was practically dyed red. There wasn't even a gap between the glowing dots. After diving another 1,000 meters, I finally saw the bottom of the limestone cave on the screen. This meant that this underground space had a height of around 800 meters. The length and width were still unknown. All I knew was that it was a colossal space overflowing with zombies. And it wasn't just zombies. There were all sorts of monsters I had never seen before. I started steering the train to move parallel to the cave, wanting to see just how far it stretched. But it wasn't until over 10,000 meters later that I finally saw the end. The limestone cave began to slope upward toward the surface, turning into a vertical tunnel. Countless zombies were stacked on top of each other, forming a human ladder, while several level 9 zombies stood at the very top. They were frantically digging out this vertical tunnel, inching their way upward bit by bit. The structure of the entire limestone cave was L-shaped, and the top of the L was continuously extending upward, now less than 100 meters from the surface. What was even more terrifying was that the top of this vertical underground tunnel was exactly at the core center of the zombie basin. The exact spot where I had flown out from the underground nuclear bomb encounter map. A flash of horror crossed my eyes. I gritted my teeth as I looked at the train's control panel. At this moment, only one thought remained in my mind. I had to quickly upgrade to a level 9 train and escape the zombie basin. This was practically a guaranteed death trap. With the speed those zombies were digging, in one day at most, that endless horde of zombies would break through the surface. And what was even more lethal was that the entire zombie basin was essentially like a massive volcano. The only difference was that what it would erupt wasn't magma, but an endless tide of zombies. I couldn't even determine how many zombies were in that colossal underground cave space. The enemy detection radar screen was completely dyed red. Just level 9 zombies alone, I had already spotted dozens, not to mention the numerous other level 9 monsters I had never encountered before. Once this horde of zombies erupted all at once, not a single train in the zombie basin would survive. That vertical underground tunnel had both of its sides coated in a thick layer of steel. It was installed by the zombies as they formed their human ladder. This steel layer could block the scans of ordinary enemy detection radars, but it couldn't stop mine. My radar had reached level 20. That steel layer was completely useless against it. We have to run. I quickly made my decision. We can't go back to the Sand River Plains anymore. I have to upgrade the train to level 9 immediately and leave this area to enter the high-tier blue zone. I looked at the control panel. The conditions for upgrading the level 8 train were clearly displayed before me. All mandatory installation parts were completed. Consume 100,000 units of level 2 iron ore. The total level of all parts in the train must exceed 160 and possess 5 transcendent effects. I had met all these conditions. The control panel showed the train still had 1.9 million units of iron ore. But it was glaringly obvious. The resources to upgrade to a level 8 train were sufficient, but to upgrade to a level 9 train, they were nowhere near enough. No, I immediately rejected the thought of recklessly entering the high-tier zone unprepared. Level 10 is a massive hurdle. If I enter the blue zone in a half-baked state, even if I escape the zombie basin, I'd just be courting death. If I can upgrade the train's armor to level 9, I still have a chance to survive this crisis. With a heavy expression, I looked at the train car's steel armor module. The Hongqing train has a total of 15 cars and 1 locomotive. The cost to upgrade the armor of each car from level 8 to level 9 is 500,000 units of iron ore. In total, I need 8 million units. Right now, I'm short by a staggering 6 million. This deficit is almost impossible to make up within a single day, unless I find a level 4 iron mine. If everyone mined together, we could dig up 6 million units of iron ore in 24 hours. But level 4 iron mines aren't that easy to come by. My train's armor is already considered high among the current trains, and upgrading defenses inherently consumes a terrifying amount of resources. The level 8 trains I've encountered before mostly only had level 7 energy shields. Even many level 9 trains were stuck at level 7 or 8. I steered the train out of the ground, closed my eyes, and leaned back in my chair. My expression gradually relaxed as I forced myself into the calmest state possible, beginning to review every available resource left on the train. A minute later, I opened my eyes, looked out the window at the howling, frantic wind, and lit a cigarette. The smoke swirled near the ceiling of the car, lingering. I had figured out a way. First, I have to make this news public. There are quite a few level 9 trains in the zombie basin. Most of them have high offense, but low defense. Even though they don't have level 9 armor, They have the firepower to kill level 9 zombies. I also have the ability to do that. I just don't have enough resources. If we gather all the trains and have the others hand over the majority of their resources to trains capable of killing level 9 zombies, like mine, we'll take charge of dealing with the level 9 zombies, while everyone else works together to fend off the level 7 and level 8 ones. As for the lower level zombies, no matter how many there are, they can only surround the trains. They won't be able to break through the defense systems. This is the most ideal plan. And with this method, the majority of the trains will have a chance to survive. Next is the last resort. If no one listens, then my only option is to try and scrape together 8 million units of iron during this crisis. The fastest way to do that is to plunder other trains. As long as I have enough resources to upgrade my armor, I don't know if those other trains will survive, but I definitely will. A moment later, I steered the trains swiftly away from the area, retracing our path toward the open pit level 2 iron mine we had encountered on the way here. Even though it's only level 2 iron ore, in this situation, I can't afford to be picky. I'll mine as much as I can. On the train's radio broadcast, I sent a pinned message. Hongxing train, I have detected that the zombie basin is about to experience the largest zombie tide outbreak in history. In one day at the latest, countless zombies will erupt from the center of the basin like a volcano. The numbers could reach hundreds of thousands, maybe even close to 1 million. There is no exact data yet. Just level 9 zombies alone, dozens have already been spotted. This is a massive catastrophe that concerns every single train. Only if all trains unite will we have a chance to survive. I hope to get a response from all main class trains. I have the capability to kill level 9 zombies. As long as we eliminate all the level 9 zombies, even if the remaining numbers are overwhelmingly huge, they won't be able to cause catastrophic damage to the other trains. My copper ore isn't enough, and the copper ore of the other main class trains isn't enough either. I urge all trains to gather immediately and transfer your copper ore to the trains capable of killing level 9 zombies, like us. We will stand on the front lines. After sending the message, I let out a long breath. Honestly, this was all too idealistic. First of all, it's very hard for me to prove that this zombie outbreak is real, because the radars of the other trains can't detect the zombies at all. Unless I'm willing to open my cockpit doors and let each train enter my control room to see the enemy detection radar screen with their own eyes. But setting aside whether I'd agree to that or not, no captain would want to leave their own train to step onto someone else's. Doing that is no different from handing your life straight over to the other party. And by the time everyone realizes this is real, it'll be too late. By then, there won't be any time left for all the trains to gather and negotiate. Sure enough, the moment the message was sent, it immediately drew attention. After all, it was a pinned message, and the Hongxing train was the vessel with the most transcendent effects. Its reputation was nothing to scoff at. However, the vast majority of the responses were filled with doubt and suspicion. Level 8 mechanical train, Xiaomiao. Bro, you should really change your pitch. If you said to hand over our copper ore and you'd pay us high daily interest, maybe someone would actually be tempted. But you didn't even bother dangling a carrot. You just opened your mouth and asked to clean us out. Level 7 mechanical train, Z-Way. Illegal fundraising is against the law, buddy. Oh wait, it's the apocalypse. Never mind then. Just try asking around and see if anyone is actually willing to give it to you. Level 9 flesh train, Dushin. If there really was such a good deal, that'd be sweet. I'd eat till I'm stuffed. Level 7 mechanical train, Nepal. Is this real or fake, man? Don't scare me. I just got to this area. With that many level 9 zombies, wouldn't a level 7 train like mine be dead for sure? Level 8 mechanical train, Menghu Chushan. I feel like this guy isn't lying. The deadline is only one day. If it's fake, his reputation will be completely ruined. Who would dare trade with him after that? He wouldn't go so far as to spin such a massive lie just for some copper ore. Logic tells me I should believe it, but emotionally, I'm hoping it's all just a fake. Level 9 mechanical train, Wei, Hongxing train, send your coordinates over. If what you're saying is true, then you should have the guts to meet me and talk face to face. Level 8 mechanical train, SpongeBob. I believe this, bro, but copper ore is really hard to mine. Even if it's true, you should at least trade something for it. Why are you just asking for it for free? Copper ore doesn't just fall from the sky. At this moment, the Hongqing train had parked next to the level 2 iron mine I encountered on the way here. All the residents had disembarked and started mining the ore. Logically, they had been working all day and it was time to rest, but the current situation clearly didn't allow for such luxuries. I scrolled through the radio broadcast. It had completely blown up. A mix of all sorts of emotions: doubt, fear, confusion, helplessness, and even mockery. I stayed silent for a moment, then sent a set of coordinates. Hongqing train, time is running out. There are currently a total of 11 main-class trains in the zombie basin. I hope the captains of these 11 trains can get to these coordinates as quickly as possible. We don't have much time left. After that, I turned to look at a module inside the train car, the stasis space. This was the Hongqing train's only purple-grade module, and also the only module that could be crafted when the train upgraded to level 7. I had just finished crafting it and hadn't upgraded it yet. Its effect was to put all living creatures inside the train car, except the captain, into a state of stasis for half an hour, regardless of whether they were monsters, livestock, or outsiders. In other words, every train above level 7 had this module. Under the threat of the stasis space, no one dared to casually board someone else's train. At that time, I could use the enemy detection radar's holographic projection to prove the existence of the zombies. The coordinates I provided were exactly at the core center of the zombie basin. Without level 9 armor, I didn't want to directly confront these main-class trains, at least not before everything was made clear. If they had ulterior motives, I'd be the one in danger. The cooldown for the train's special skill, Absolute Defense, was 10 days. It was currently still on cooldown, with nearly 3 days left before it finished. Perhaps these main-class trains had been through more, or maybe they were just more cowardly. I saw that nearly half of the main-class trains had responded on the radio broadcast. To ensure safety, none of the trains dared to approach the coordinates directly. Instead, they deliberately scattered around the perimeter, leaving a buffer zone for reaction time, while sending their trusted aides to communicate. In reality, if my train wasn't just a level 7 train, they could have easily communicated directly in the combat training simulation space. 2 hours later, several main-class trains announced that they had arrived at the coordinate area. By this time, I had also ordered all the residents back onto the train, then steered it to continue heading toward the location. When we were 15,000 meters away from the coordinates, I stopped. Xiao AI jumped out of the train car alone, preparing to go meet them solo. As long as he remained within the range of the enemy detection radar, Xiao AI could maintain his connection with the robot. It was too dangerous for anyone else to go along. There was a high chance they wouldn't make it back. Xiao AI was the most suitable choice. No matter what happened, it would just be a broken robot. Xiao AI's true body wouldn't die. Virum. Accompanied by the roar of the engine, Xiao AI rode the dirt bike, speeding toward the coordinates. I looked at the enemy detection radar and saw 2 main-class trains parked within the scanning range. I carefully checked the module information of these 2 trains. Sure enough, their weapon levels weren't low, and they even had purple-grade weapons. One of them had upgraded 3 Doomsday Mech cannons to level 10, which required consuming 6 Murphy stones. The Doomsday Mech cannon was originally a blue-grade module, maxing out at level 8. But after reaching level 10, it gained 2 transcendent effects that halved its consumption. A level 10 Doomsday Mech cannon was one of the most practical modules available right now. High enough firepower, low enough consumption. The prerequisite was that it had to reach level 10. If it was only level 8, it was significantly inferior. The plutocrat energy shields on both of these main-class trains were also level 8. On the radio broadcast, the arguments still hadn't stopped. Actually, a lot of people had started to believe me, especially after seeing quite a few main-class trains respond. They were mainly divided into 2 camps. One was completely panicked, just venting their emotions and having no idea what to do. The other agreed to hand over their copper ore, but refused to give it up for free. They demanded to exchange it for other resources and insisted that the loot dropped from killing the zombies be split evenly. We can't just give you all our copper ore and let you take all the dropped loot too. You can't have all the good stuff on your side. When Xiao AI arrived on his dirt bike, there were already 6 men standing at the coordinates. Their outfits varied, representing different trains, and no one wasted any words. Xiao AI stopped the bike and pulled a screen from his chest, which played a direct video recording of the enemy detection radar screen. You guys couldn't detect it because your radar levels aren't high enough. The video is right here. There's no doubting this. The Hongxing train's proposal is for everyone to join forces and gather all the trains. The lower-level trains will hand over their copper ore. We'll take charge of killing the level 9 zombies, and the rest of you will handle the other zombies. Otherwise, we're all dead for sure. Xiao AI spoke very decisively. His true body was in the cockpit, so I could communicate with him seamlessly. Those words were exactly my thoughts. We're all dead for sure. The 6 men looked at each other. It seemed they had secretly reached a consensus before Xiao AI arrived, and then they all burst out laughing. No. A burly man wearing a fur coat over a sweater stepped forward. Robot, I think you're mistaken about something. We believe this crisis is real, and we believe your radar is a higher level than ours. But in this disaster, the ones who die won't be us. It'll be your Hongxing train. After all, we're all main-class trains. We can easily leave the zombie basin at any time. We aren't locked in here. Why should we risk our lives with you? The ones in a hurry are you, not us. Of course, we aren't completely heartless. You want to step up and rally everyone? We can play along. We'll form a temporary alliance and collect the copper ore from the lower-level trains. But the Hongxing train has to trade Murphy stones for it. That's right. Another man wearing a dark green military coat stepped forward, his expression serious. Our captain feels the same way. Your Hongxing train has so many transcendent effects. You definitely have no shortage of Murphy stones. There are 6 of us here. 100 Murphy stones for each of us, and we'll help you with this. In a time of crisis like this, surely you won't be stingy over a few hundred Murphy stones. Don't be so quick to refuse. Use your radio and ask your captain. I know you can't make the call yourself. Xiao AI stayed silent for half a minute, waiting to receive my full instructions before preparing to speak again. A level 10 train is a massive hurdle. I recall that the blue zone is different from the other zones. Once a level 9 train enters, it can never return to the lower level zones, right? If you guys could enter the high-tier zone so easily, you wouldn't have stayed in the zombie basin for this long. It's obvious that you aren't fully prepared to upgrade to level 10 trains either. Recklessly entering the blue zone is just courting death. Furthermore, with so many level 9 zombies and hundreds of thousands of other zombies, it's a crisis, but it's also an opportunity. As long as we successfully fend them off, the loot drops will be incredibly rich. When the time comes, we split it evenly. The development of every train will be significantly accelerated. This isn't just the Hongxing train's problem. It concerns all of you too. You're saving yourselves. No. The man in the fur coat shook his head, his voice firm. Our captain made it very clear. No Murphy stones, no deal. We'd rather gamble and enter the blue zone than help you for free. For free? Xiao AI's eyes flashed cold. He chuckled and said, Aren't you also helping yourselves? Whoever steps up has to pay the price. You want to play the big boss, but you don't want to cough up anything. Do you want to hog all the good stuff for yourselves? Just then, another man walked over from a distance, his voice full of annoyance. Let's be blunt. This crisis is actually your Hongxing train's problem. You're begging us. Understand? Without level 9 trains like us, whether your Hongxing train can survive or not, you know the answer in your heart. If you don't want to cough up anything, then get lost. By the time you come crawling back to beg, the price won't be the same as it is now. Xiao AI stayed silent for a moment. After receiving my instructions, he turned and walked toward the dirt bike. Our captain says, cooperation declined. We'll meet again if fate allows. Trying to leave? A vicious glint flashed in the eyes of the man in the military coat. He instantly drew his rifle, aimed straight at Xiao AI, and prepared to fire. Right at that moment, Xiao AI suddenly stopped and spun around. At some point, he was already dual-wielding 2 Gatling guns, the barrels spinning wildly. The next second, BRRRRT. The 2 Gatling guns roared simultaneously. Energy bullets poured out like a torrent of metal, instantly engulfing all 7 men. No hesitation. He just opened fire. 3 seconds later, the gunfire ceased. Xiao AI opened his abdominal armor, stuffed the 2 Gatling guns into the internal storage compartment, then strode over to the dirt bike and sped straight back to the Hongxing train. By now, the Hongxing train had already started up, its speed gradually increasing. In the very last car, Uncle Lee stood at the rear of the train, lowering the back armor to form a ramp. The metal armor scraped violently against the ground, sending sparks flying like fireworks in the howling wind. Behind the train, Xiao AI sped up on the dirt bike, suddenly hitting the brakes. The front of the bike popped up, and the entire motorcycle flew up the ramp, crashing straight into the train car. Uncle Lee glanced at the few trains closing in through the darkness in the distance. He snorted coldly and spat outside. "Go eat dirt." With that, he quickly pulled the armor back up, and the train car instantly sealed shut again. Xiao AI tossed the motorcycle aside and strode through the train cars, heading straight for the cockpit. In the cockpit, I stared intently at the enemy detection radar screen. The two pursuing main-class trains had been left far behind. When it came to speed in stormy weather, the Hongxing train feared no one. Right now, the train's top speed had already surpassed the 1,000 mark. How could they even chase us? If Xiao AI's route hadn't exposed our position, their radars wouldn't have been able to track the Hongxing train at all. I leaned back in my chair, calmly lit a cigarette, and shifted my gaze to the train's radio broadcast. Clearly, this plan had failed. Humans, when faced with disaster, are actually quite united creatures. But unfortunately, that's only when the disaster has truly struck. Before that, there are always plenty of people clinging to a fluke mentality, including those main-class trains. As long as they have a way out, they're more than willing to demand extortionate prices. 100 Murphy stones per train. They really had the nerve to ask. If I had that many Murphy stones, would I even need to ally with them? I could just sell them cheap at 50,000 units of iron ore apiece, and wouldn't I easily make 6 million? Captain, Xiao AI pushed the door open and walked in. Do we have another plan? I stayed silent for a moment, exhaled a long drag of smoke, then waved my hand and said softly, "Call Mona and Daba over here." I pointed at the 6 Murphy stones sitting on the table. These are all the Murphy stones left on the train. When you guys teleport to the high-tier zone, if you run into other high-tier trains, sell them. Start by quoting a high price. If they can't afford it, you can slowly lower it. Only trade for iron ore. Daba nodded seriously and looked over at Mingda. Meaning, sell it for as much as possible, but if it doesn't sell, drop the price. Got it. Mona nodded vigorously. Go. Whether these 6 Murphy stones sell or not, you must return to the train immediately after 20 hours. Grab 2 interstellar tram tickets from living car number 4 yourselves and head out. Bring some other daily supplies too, cigarettes, cigars, Coca-Cola, various spatial bags. Use your own judgment on what to take. Daba, go see if Mengda can carry the refrigerator with him when he teleports. If not, put on more clothes. A jacket only has one pocket that can hold a spatial function, but you can wear multiple jackets at once. Or do what Xiao AI did. Cut out the pockets with the spatial function, stitch them into a small spatial bag, and then put that spatial bag inside another spatial bag. This was Xiao AI's invention. He named it the Xiao AI spatial bag, and even installed it inside his own stomach. The cost is incredibly low, just 1 unit of wood. It's considered the most cost-effective item on the train, even though the refrigerator also has a spatial function and a larger capacity. A level 10 refrigerator requires 4,500 units of iron ore, which is way more expensive compared to the spatial bags. After sorting everything out, I finally looked over at Xiao AI. Go sell spatial bags. Price them at 1,000 units of iron ore each. Try to scrape together some more iron ore before the zombie volcano erupts. Once the disaster strikes, take the opportunity to plunder a few more trains. Avoid the level 9 zombies and try to gather the 6 million units of iron ore. Understood. As for the targets to plunder, I calmly looked at the 2 main-class trains on the enemy detection radar. They had stopped chasing, so now it was my turn to tail them. I kept a very long distance behind them. The moment they split up, that would be my time to strike. A main-class train, under a surprise attack, it's not guaranteed that I couldn't take them down. The crafting cost for a level 9 shell for the Doomsday Mech Cannon is 700 units of copper ore. After having the consumption twice, that's 175 units of copper ore per level 9 shell. Right now, I have a total of 1,295,000 units of copper ore, enough to craft 7,400 level 9 shells. This amount of ammo is nowhere near enough to deal with the zombie volcano, but it's more than enough to ambush a main-class train. The enemy only has a level 8 plutocrat energy shield. It won't be able to block the Doomsday mech cannon at all. Furthermore, I'm tailing them from 20,000 meters away. Their radar won't be able to detect my train whatsoever. My radar jammer has reached level 10. Even if I am detected, I can still use the mechanical tentacles to disguise myself as a flesh train. I can lock onto the target from extreme range with the Doomsday mech cannon, unleash a lightning-fast devastating strike, and then move in to harvest the loot. If they won't listen to reason, then it's my turn to speak with physics. Sugar-coated pills or artillery shells, sooner or later, they have to swallow one. Meanwhile, in the combat training simulation space, the 9 captains of the level 9 mechanical trains were standing in an arena, holding a small meeting. A middle-aged man frowned and said, "What the hell are you guys doing? I know negotiations can fail, but you guys failed way too fast. I haven't even arrived yet, and you're already done negotiating? You should have at least waited for everyone to get there before talking. Could you have a little consideration for those of us who are further away?" "Consideration for you?" A bald man replied with a gloomy expression. "Then who has consideration for me? My lieutenant died without a sound. Who am I supposed to reason with? That Hongxing train doesn't play by the rules at all. The moment negotiations failed, they just straight up killed people. Cooperating with that kind of person will be betrayed sooner or later." "Then what do we do now?" the middle-aged man asked in a deep voice. "We all know our own situation perfectly well. If the blue zone was that easy to enter, we would have gone a long time ago. We wouldn't have stayed in the zombie basin until now. It's exactly because we can't go that we're stuck here. We could use the fact that the Hongxing train doesn't know this as a bargaining chip, but if negotiations fail completely, we'll die too when the time comes. The method the Hongxing train proposed is truly the only way to survive. All the trains have to gather together to have a chance at survival. The copper ore in the hands of the other trains has to be collected too, otherwise it simply won't be enough. How many Murphy stones did you guys ask for?" 100 per train. Is that it? Originally, we only planned for 50. I gave him room to haggle, but he didn't even try to bargain. He just flat out rejected it. The middle-aged man stayed silent for a long time, then gritted his teeth and said, "If that's the case, there's only one way left. Wait. Wait for death? In this zombie volcano crisis, if the Hongxing train can't pull off his plan, he's dead for sure. Right now, he still doesn't know that we can't leave the zombie basin either. We just need to play it cool. Wait until he can't take it anymore and comes crawling back to beg. Then we'll lower the price for him, and he won't have any room to refuse. Now it's a contest to see who can hold out longer. His radar knows when the zombie volcano will erupt, but ours don't. The one who sees the fuse burning is usually the one who has a harder time staying calm. On this point, we have the advantage." "I have no problem with that," the bald man said coldly. "But let me say this first. After this disaster is over, us brothers have already agreed to gang up and wipe out the Hongxing train. No matter how many transcendent effects he has, I don't believe he can hold off 6 main-class trains. I definitely want a piece of this pie. Count me in when the time comes." Under the night sky, the 2 main-class trains running parallel finally split up, each speeding off in a different direction. Phew. The bald man left the combat training simulation space and returned to his cockpit. He glanced at the pinned message on the train's radio broadcast and scoffed coldly. "Now you think of selling spatial bags? 1,000 units of iron ore each. That's some good stuff." Even he was a little tempted. One look, and it's obvious the Hongxing train is desperately trying to hoard iron or to upgrade to a main-class train and escape the zombie basin. He actually really hoped the Hongxing would gather enough resources to upgrade successfully, because when that time came, when the other party realized that even after reaching level 9, they still couldn't leave the zombie basin, just thinking about it was hilarious. He didn't buy it, not because he didn't want to, but because he knew the Hongxing wouldn't sell to him anymore. But that was fine. Once the Hongxing came crawling back to beg, those things would be his sooner or later. If you're begging, you need to show the right attitude. But the most pressing matter right now was choosing a new vice captain, since his old one had just died not long ago. Right at that moment, the train's warning alarm suddenly blared, piercing the ears. Beep, beep. High-speed, incoming fire detected. Estimated impact in 2 seconds. Level 9 attack intensity. Countermeasures recommended. The bald man froze. Looking through the rearview mirror, he saw hundreds of artillery shells tearing through the night sky toward him. Terror flashed in his eyes. Without a second of hesitation, he immediately activated the Tycoon energy shield and shoved the control lever forward, preparing to run for his life. After a quick scan of the enemy radar, he couldn't help but curse under his breath. Damn it, he couldn't even see the enemy on the screen. Even if he wanted to counterattack, he didn't know who to shoot at. The next moment, an earth-shattering explosion roared as hundreds of shells slammed into the Tycoon energy shield all at once. A level 8 shield could withstand a portion of level 9 firepower, but only a portion. The shield was quickly riddled with holes. The shells pierced through, smashing directly into the train's level 3 armor. Almost instantly, the driver's cabin shook violently. The bald man's heart pounded wildly. Amidst his panic, a smile of sheer luck crept onto his face. Thank God it held. As long as he could escape first, he'd find out who was behind this. However, in the rearview mirror, he despairingly watched as another barrage of hundreds of shells hurtled toward him. The light in his eyes slowly faded, replaced by a creeping sense of absolute despair. He was really going to die. In his final moments, his gaze turned venomous as he glared at the instant self-destruct button. Even in death, he wouldn't let his train's resources fall into someone else's hands. Right then, the train's radio screen suddenly popped up with a forced private message from the Hengxing. Beg for mercy now, and I'll spare your life. In a split second, the bald man grabbed the radio like a drowning man catching his last lifeline, opening his mouth to scream. But he only managed to utter a single word before countless shells rained down like meteors, completely engulfing this level 9 locomotive. The level 9 mechanical train, named Wei, slowly dimmed, then vanished from all the leaderboards. The bald man's train was the first level 9 train to be destroyed in the zombie basin during this entire period. In the dead of night, the Hengxing slowly came to a halt beside the burning wreckage. As the door of defense carriage number 7 opened, squads 1 and 3 moved in sequentially. They quickly split into teams, subduing the slaves, eliminating any remaining combat forces, and gathering supplies. 10 minutes later, I stepped off the train and entered the severely damaged driver's cabin of the Wei. I crouched down, looking at the bald man who died with his eyes wide open, his face frozen in despair. I muttered softly, "I told you to beg for mercy, and I'd spare your life. Why were you so slow?" The cabin was in ruins, scorched everywhere. The lower half of the man's body was gone, leaving only his mangled upper half scattered like dry autumn leaves. I stood up and looked at Biaozi, who had come to report, my voice remaining calm. "Kill all the lackeys and anyone at the management level or above. Escort the remaining residents onto the Hengxing. We'll screen them one by one after the disaster." After handling everything, I leaned on my cane and stepped off the train, standing in the wasteland, gazing up at the bright moon in the distance. Behind me was the smell of gunpowder mixed with burnt flesh. I liked this smell. The night was so bright. I had abandoned my plan to help the majority of people survive the zombie volcano disaster. Some people just aren't worth saving, especially those who wanted to charge me a toll for copper ore. I needed copper ore to save your lives, yet you still try to haggle with me. Then hold on to your copper ore tightly. Let's see if your blue and gold-grade weapons can pierce the armor of level 9 zombies when the time comes. I've already prepared for the worst-case scenario. The Hengxing has a total of 16 carriages, including the locomotive. The cost to upgrade all of them to level 9 armor is 8 million units of iron ore. But if the situation really gets that bad, I'll abandon 10 carriages, keeping only the locomotive and 5 others. That way, the cost to upgrade to level 9 armor drops to just 3 million units of iron ore. I could even take it to the extreme. Keep only 1 carriage, and shove everything and everyone into the freezer. It's just that by doing so, he would have to give up a lot of things. Many of the foundations he had built up over so long would have to be discarded. For example, the red-grade accessory treasure land missile, the 10 doomsday machine guns, the 40-barrel Sakura rocket launcher, along with the carriages sporting level 8 armor, and so on. He just wanted to minimize his losses a bit, but there were always fools who thought they had him by the throat. Soon, half an hour later, old Zhu ran over to report. "Boss Mang, the supplies have all been inventoried. Everything is right here. I took the list old Zhu handed me, scanned it quickly, and chuckled softly. As expected of a level 9 train, its foundation is solid. No wonder he talked so tough. He actually had the capital to back it up. The moment I launched the attack, I only worried about one thing. What if the other party pressed the instant self-destruct button? Then all my efforts would have been for nothing, and I'd have wasted a massive amount of copper or to boot. That was exactly why I gave him a glimmer of hope at the very last second. When a person is drowning, even if they only see a single straw, they'll desperately cling to it with bloodshot eyes. Sure enough, I heard a miserable scream ring out over the train's radio. Just that single word, and then silence. The artillery shells had already landed. On the verge of death, people don't have time to overthink. He didn't even have time to wonder how I could possibly spare his life when the shells were already right above his head. Did he think I could just snap my fingers and make the shells change direction? 1,201,000 units of iron ore. 1,080,000 units of copper ore. 10,000 units of wood. A batch of daily living supplies. Over 700 survivors. Time was tight, so the daily supplies weren't inventoried in detail. Zhang Yi and Zhang Er threw them all straight into the freezer. We mainly just tallied the resources. No Murphy stones and no blueprints. But the resources were indeed plentiful. I walked briskly back to the driver's cabin and looked at the train's resource dashboard. 3,101,000 units of iron ore. 2,235,000 units of copper ore. 1,509,000 units of wood. 4,480,000 units of crimson core rock. In those 2 volleys just now, I fired 800 shells, consuming 140,000 units of copper ore. But I gained 1,080,000 units of copper ore in return. A complete return on investment. Looking at the dashboard, I chuckled softly. I tried talking nicely, but he wouldn't listen. It wasn't until the shells were right above his head that he finally started screaming. Why not do it sooner? If he had just screamed a bit earlier, wouldn't it have been better for everyone to get along? I shook my head. First, I took out 500,000 units of iron ore and upgraded the locomotive's armor to level 9. This way, even if something goes wrong, at least the locomotive can be preserved. The locomotive is the core of a train. As long as it remains, the train still has a chance to make a comeback. This is the advantage of armor accessories. Armor defense accessories allow for individual upgrades of each carriage, whereas energy shields do not. An energy shield is a holistic accessory. When activated, it covers the entire train and cannot be upgraded in parts. Of course, the resources consumed for each upgrade are also astronomical, far exceeding the cost of upgrading armor. I also have an energy shield accessory, and I've already upgraded it to level 3. I understand the situation perfectly. The cost of this accessory scales with the number of carriages. The more carriages, the higher the upgrade cost. This is quite similar to armor, but the difference is that you can't upgrade it carriage by carriage. You have to upgrade the whole thing at once. After upgrading the energy shield, every time a new carriage is added, a corresponding amount of iron ore must also be consumed. So what's next? I found one of the 6 trains that Xiao AI had just targeted, a B-potential level 9 mechanical train. The Horizon. Then, I sent a forced private message. I'll make a private deal with you. I'll give you 100 Murphy stones, and you give me 1 million units of iron ore. Don't tell anyone else. The market is chaotic right now, and I won't be able to sell them later. We trade on the spot. I'll send you the coordinates. Oh, finally thought it through, huh? Can't we trade remotely? The condition for me to trade remotely is that I have to post a message in the chat, which will expose it. One word, do you accept or not? If not, I'll find someone else. You're sensible. Send the coordinates. We'll meet and trade. Sent. I'll be waiting for you. Very good. I chuckled softly, then consumed 300,000 units of iron ore to upgrade the red grade accessory, geocentric furnace, to level 9. The locomotive slowly opened up, revealing countless high-speed spinning gears inside, and directly swallowed that level 9 train whole. The sound of grinding steel rang out continuously. Gaining 870,000 units of iron ore, I clicked my tongue softly. Zombie Basin. Inside the driver's cabin of the Horizon. A woman sat in the chair, lighting a cigarette and bringing it to her lips. Her eyes were full of disdain as she looked at the Hengxing's information on the dashboard. You could guess what the Hengxing was trying to do with your eyes closed. He wanted to quickly upgrade to level 9 and escape this zombie basin. Too bad. Even if he upgraded to level 9, he still wouldn't be able to leave. But that didn't matter. For now, she would just take these 100 Murphy stones. Wait until the Hengxing realizes he can't escape and comes crawling back to beg them. At that point, she would start organizing all the trains to gather and prepare to face this crisis together. As for that 1 million iron ore, she had absolutely no intention of handing it over. Her train had B-rank potential. It came with a special train skill and possessed a blue-grade heavy firepower accessory, the light energy cannon. Moreover, it was a level 9 train. She wasn't too afraid of the Hengxing. Even if the Hengxing's overpowered effects were ridiculously exaggerated and it had S-rank potential, if they really fought, it wasn't certain who would win. But she didn't plan on fighting either. She just intended to say that she would hand over the iron ore after the zombie volcano ended. Would the Hengxing really dare to rob her? At a critical moment like this, would he dare offend her? Right now, there were two obvious facts laid out before them. First, without all the level 9 trains rallying together, it would be almost impossible to gather the other trains. The Hengxing's rallying power alone wasn't enough. Second, even if all the trains heeded the Hengxing's call and handed over all their copper ore, it would be useless. Relying solely on the weapons of the Hengxing alone, how could they possibly fend off such a massive zombie tide? They absolutely needed level 9 trains like theirs. Only they, along with a portion of the veteran level 8 trains, had the capability to kill level 9 zombies. Completing a B-rank difficulty mechanical class advancement quest required quite a few Murphy stones. She had already tasted the wonders of Murphy stones, which only made her crave them even more. If he could easily offer up 100 stones, didn't that prove he had even more? An indescribable look of anticipation flashed in the woman's eyes as she pushed the control lever, turning the train around and heading straight for the coordinates. Zombie Basin. A level 7 flesh train was quietly parked beside a wasteland. It was the Hengxing, disguised using mechanical tentacles. At this moment, it was about 8,000 meters away from the coordinates. He wasn't sure if the level 9 train, the Horizon, would actually show up. All he could do was wait patiently. Right then, it arrived. The enemy radar showed a level 9 train rapidly approaching. The drill at the front of the Hengxing quickly extended and began spinning at high speed. Then, it instantly vanished underground, tunneling rapidly toward the level 9 train, moving parallel to it. At this point, the distance to the coordinates was only 300 meters, but he didn't plan on waiting any longer. The next moment, train special skill, Death Spin. A high-speed spinning metal storm suddenly erupted from beneath the ground, aiming straight for the driver's cabin of the level 9 train. In almost a split second, the high-speed drill bored right into the cabin. Immediately after, the high-speed spinning saw blades on both sides of the carriages engulfed the entire area. In the blink of an eye, the battle was over. The level 9 train, Horizon, destroyed. The Hengxing hadn't shown up on the radar at all. Like a venomous snake that had been lurking underground for a long time, it delivered a fatal strike. The level 9 train didn't even have time to activate its energy shield. This was another flaw of the energy shield. It only activated automatically when it sensed an attack. With the Hengxing suddenly bursting out from underground like that, the shield simply couldn't react in time. The driver's cabin, which only had level 3 armor, was crushed almost instantly. Even the second and third carriages, carried by their momentum, slammed directly into the emerging Hengxing and were completely pulverized on the spot. The rear carriages lost their balance and crashed into the adjacent wasteland, like a centipede that had its head chopped off. The wheels on the overturned carriages were still spinning, but having lost their power source, they gradually slowed down. The entire battle, from start to finish, took less than 3 seconds. If Chen Meng hadn't just extended the saw blades by 1 meter, but fully deployed them, then in their complete state, the 10-meter-long blades could have directly shredded nearly half of this 19-carriage train. Building a level 9 train truly required a massive amount of time. Even Chen Meng, going from a level 1 train to his current level 7, had taken nearly 3 months. For anyone else to build a level 9 train, even if they were as fast as him, it would take at least 4 months. But destroying a level 9 train? That only took 4 seconds. Since ancient times, There has been an immutable law. Destruction is always easier and takes far less time than creation. His train's upgrade speed wasn't considered fast, largely because he had spent so much time solidifying its foundation. This was exactly why he could use a level 7 train to instantly obliterate a level 9 train. This time, it was a literal instant kill. No exaggeration whatsoever. On the leaderboard, the name of the level 9 train, Horizon, began to fade, then quickly vanished. At this point, the consecutive disappearance of 2 trains in such a short time finally caught everyone's attention. Panic immediately spread across the train radio channels. People began to speculate whether the zombie volcano the Hengxing mentioned was real, and if it had already started erupting. But soon, when someone suggested that these 2 level 9 trains might have just moved on to a higher level area, the panic gradually subsided. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. They almost thought the disaster had already broken out. But right after, someone else raised another question. Why did these 2 level 9 trains leave right at this exact moment, neither earlier nor later? Choosing to leave right now? 9 times out of 10, they were running away. The discussions on the radio instantly devolved back into panic and fear, even worse than before. People have a subconscious tendency to follow the crowd. If 9,900 people turn left toward hell, and only 100 turn right toward heaven, then the 10,000th first person is highly likely to turn left too, even knowing full well that hell lies in that direction. This is exactly why hell is always so crowded, because there are always fools leading the way. In the Hengxing's driver's cabin, I sat in my chair, watching the rapidly shifting messages on the radio. I said calmly, "You've developed the ability to self-learn. There's no data on driving a motorcycle in your database, but by observing Biaozi and the others every day, you learned how to ride one. Is the captain praising me?" Xiao AI asked softly from the corner. "I suppose so." I paused for a moment before continuing. But conversely, if this 10,000th first person stood alone at the crossroads, he would be highly likely to trust his own judgment and turn right toward heaven. When people are alone, they tend to be more clear-headed. Then where will the captain go? I stood up, lit a cigarette, sighed, and looked at Xiao AI. I'm not going anywhere. Heaven or hell, aren't they both places you only go to after you die? I'm not going to die. Let's go. Let's step off and see what our harvest is this time. It was clear that many people were losing sleep tonight. It was almost dawn, yet the radio was still incredibly active. In just over 2 short hours, the sentiment on the radio had shifted several times. From initially doubting the authenticity of the news, to later being willing to believe it was true, but refusing to provide copper or unconditionally demanding items in exchange. Until now, where the majority were willing to offer up most of their copper or, just hoping someone would step up to lead, gather everyone, and prepare to fight the impending disaster. Not every train possessed level 9 or higher weapon accessories. Only by handing over the bulk of the copper ore to these trains could they prioritize eliminating the most dangerous level 9 zombies. The remaining level 7 and 8 zombies could be dealt with slowly, and the even lower level ones could be tanked with energy shields. It was just that, at this moment, the Hengxing had been silent on the train radio for quite a while, only quietly sending pinned messages selling items. As for the other 9 level 9 trains, for some unknown reason, they were acting like they were mute, not saying a single word. 634,000 units of iron ore, 580,000 units of copper ore, 1,010,000 units of wood, 2 Murphy stones, a batch of daily living supplies, over 800 survivors. I took the list from old Zhu and frowned. Before launching the attack, I hadn't checked all the accessories of this level 9 train in detail. I only glanced at the info on its defensive and offensive accessories, so I didn't fully understand its setup. Old Zhu. Go ahead, Boss Mang. Go check if the captain of that train is dead yet. Ask him what he was planning to do with so much wood. Build a coffin? Boss Mang, should I go down and ask? If you go down, can you come back up? I feel like that might be a bit difficult. Forget it. I waved my hand. For now, just move everything onto our train. Hurry up. Same rules as before. Kill all the lackeys and management. This captain was full of lies. He didn't even have 1,000,000 units of iron ore on his train, yet he still dared to come trade with me. It was obvious that from the very beginning, he never intended to give me the 1,000,000 iron ore. He completely planned on stiffing me. In this day and age, finding someone who trades in good faith is just too damn hard. What I need most right now is iron ore. The bald guy's level 9 train from earlier had over 1,000,000 units of iron ore stockpiled, yet this level 9 train only had a little over 600,000. That's almost half as much. Clearly, they spent a lot of time chopping wood. Aside from making clothes, wood basically doesn't have much use. I've never seen an accessory that requires wood to upgrade. Including this 1,000,000+ units of wood, the train now has a total of about 2.5 million units of wood. When will I ever use all of this? If I used it to make Xiao AI's spatial bags, it would be enough to make 2.5 million of them. Plus, there are over 1,500 survivors. Normally, my style is to only kill the captain. I didn't kill the lackeys from the geocentric nuke before either. They've all become train residents now. But the lackeys on these level 9 trains are different. They have a tough attitude, talk tough, and look incredibly loyal. It's best not to keep this kind of people around. If I did, I'd have a hard time sleeping peacefully at night. 20 minutes later, when all the resources had been moved onto the Hengxing by the guards. No. To be more precise, this job was almost entirely handled by Zhang Yi and Zhang Air. Their efficiency was fast, and they were incredibly hyped up, looking as if they had just accomplished some grand, monumental task. With this kind of work ethic, if they had worked for a moving company before the apocalypse, they definitely wouldn't have had to worry about money. It's just that they'd probably end up moving the stuff into their own homes. These two brothers share the exact same hobby, an absolute obsession with hoarding supplies. Whether it's useful or not, as long as they can get their hands on it, they're happy. The survivors were also herded into the freezer of carriage number 11 for temporary confinement. Whether there are any family members or female relatives of the captain among them, they all need to be thoroughly screened. The freezer has mechanical eyes. Xiao AI will directly pick out anyone whose eyes flash with venomous resentment. Then, once the crisis is over, Old Zhu will do a background check on them one by one. Xiao AI's mechanical eyes are especially useful. She's already caught a few of them. Some people just can't keep their thoughts to themselves. They have to show it on their faces, looking like they're biding their time for revenge. It'd be a disservice not to kill this kind of person. After handling everything, I once again controlled the Hengxing, opening its massive, bloodthirsty maw. It slowly swallowed the horizon, which only had 16 carriages left, like a python swallowing an elephant. I gained another 670,000 units of iron ore. At this point, the amount of iron ore in the Hengxing had reached 4,341,000 units. The goal of 8 million iron ore was already half complete. This is way faster than mining. The so-called crisis is both a danger and an opportunity. In the Hengxing's driver's cabin, I sat in my chair and chuckled softly. Then, I found another one of the 6 level 9 trains, the Jihao, preparing to repeat the same trick. 100 Murphy stones for 1 million units of iron ore. Want it? Don't tell anyone. The other party's response came very quickly. You're the one who took out the horizon and the way, aren't you? I frowned slightly. I got found out that fast. I was planning to fish for a few more. Pausing for a moment, I replied, didn't they leave the zombie basin? Do you want to trade or not? If not, I'll find someone else. No. Listen well, kid. I admit your train is very strong, but I'll tell you straight. Even if you upgrade to a level 9 train, you still can't leave this zombie basin. And no matter how formidable your train is, without us, what are you going to use to fend off that many zombies? How many machine guns does your train have? A few dozen? A few hundred? How much copper or do you have? A few million? Tens of millions? Without us, you can just wait to die? I looked at the messages on the radio and suddenly burst out laughing. I understood now. The underlying message in his words was crystal clear. These level 9 trains couldn't leave the zombie basin either. Then, I replied with one last message before directly blocking him. Hee. No wonder. No wonder when the horizon and the way disappeared from the leaderboard. Those people immediately concluded they were destroyed, rather than having left the zombie basin. It turns out they knew better than anyone else that these level 9 trains simply couldn't leave this area right away. I originally thought they were worried about the crisis in the blue zone and didn't want to leave. Turns out, they couldn't leave. Well, this makes things much more interesting. I don't need to rush now. I've already chosen the second path. At this rate, even if I can't trick any more level 9 trains, the zombie basin is only so big. I can totally just take my time and hunt them down. Even if I don't encounter any more level 9 trains, just relying on the 4 million plus units of iron ore is enough for me to upgrade nearly half of my carriages to level 9 armor. The losses won't be too great. As for how these level 9 trains will ultimately survive, I'm very curious and very much looking forward to it. In the virtual combat training space, the 7 captains of the mechanical trains stood in the arena, looking at each other in silence. No one spoke. After a long while, the burly middle-aged man was the first to speak, his voice carrying an indescribable emotion. It feels a bit unreal. That bald guy was just talking to me here a moment ago, and in the blink of an eye, he's dead. If I had known that was the last time I'd see him, I would have taken a few more good looks at him. You make it sound like you were good friends with him. The young man in sportswear stood at the edge of the arena, his voice gloomy. Oh, it's not like that. The burly middle-aged man spread his hands helplessly. I just wanted to observe his features closely, to see what the face of a dying man actually looks like. So that later, if I ever show that same look, I'll know to run and avoid dying a pointless death. You've got that look right now. Don't talk nonsense. I feel like my current look is perfectly fine. Enough. At this moment, a man in a white suit stepped forward, speaking coldly, word by word. We must contact the Hungshing. According to his prediction, there were at most 20 hours left before the zombie volcano erupted. Give him our bottom line straight up, 50 Murphy stones. 50 Murphy stones per train. We'll join forces with him to rally all the trains. Besides, collecting copper takes time. We can't drag this out until the last minute. You guys might not be in a rush, but I am. I don't want to die here. I can't go. The young man in sportswear said through gritted teeth, his face dark. That animal already blocked me. And he replied with exactly 2 words, hee. No one said anything. The man in the white suit stayed silent for a moment, then said, I'll go. I arrived late and haven't had any conflict with him yet. I'll try asking him. As soon as he finished speaking, the man vanished from the arena. A minute later, he reappeared, but his face looked terrible. How did it go? The burly middle-aged man asked hesitantly. Did you get rejected? Your face doesn't look like you reached an agreement. He didn't reject it, but he didn't agree either. Then how did the Hungshing reply? 2 words. What 2 words? Hee. No one said another word. Everyone fell silent. A long time later, the burly middle-aged man spoke up again. How dare he reply like that? Is he not afraid of death? When the zombie volcano erupts, can he survive it alone? We absolutely have to unite as one to survive. Does he really not understand this logic? Well, at this moment, a middle-aged man in the group raised his hand and said softly, I think the Hungshing understands. This proposal was originally brought up by him in the first place. It's just that you guys demanded too many Murphy stones, so he doesn't want to play with you anymore. I've always wondered, when the zombie volcano erupts, the Hungshing isn't the only one who's going to die. Why are you all so fixated on fleecing him? He has a lot of Murphy stones. If we don't fleece him, are we supposed to fleece you? How about this? The burly middle-aged man paused for a moment, then said, before the apocalypse, I was a negotiation expert. Give him an hour to think about it, and then I'll go negotiate with him. This time, we'll lower it to 20 Murphy stones per train. That should be enough. It shouldn't be a problem. For the 7 of us, that's only 140 stones in total. That's already very little. An hour later, everyone looked at the returning burly middle-aged man with expectant eyes. Well, how did the negotiation go? The burly middle-aged man stood in silence for a long time, then said hoarsely, he didn't agree, and he didn't reject it. Don't tell me it's those 2 words again. Yeah. Still he? Yeah. The middle-aged man who had raised his hand earlier sighed, his voice helpless. You guys treated him like a pig waiting to be slaughtered. It's obvious he'd rather die than play along with you guys anymore. Then let me go. I'll tell him we don't need a single Murphy stone, and that we should all sit down and talk. After all, the Hungshing was able to destroy the Wei and the Horizon in such a short time. His strength is unquestionable. With the Hungshing joining us, we'll have a much better chance of surviving this crisis together. No objections, right? Let's just settle on this. Surviving comes first. We can put aside those other schemes for now. The others looked at each other. No one objected, clearly tacitly accepting this plan. For now, this was the only way. Pull the Hengxing over to their side first, survive the disaster, and figure out the rest later. After saying that, the middle-aged man vanished on the spot. 3 minutes later, the middle-aged man reappeared in the arena, his face expressionless. What did the Hengxing say? 2 words. Hee. Yeah. The young man in sportswear finally couldn't hold it in anymore. He slammed his fist onto the arena, his anger exploding. What the hell is hee? Hee. Aside from that damn hee, does he know how to say anything else? We already said we don't want a single Murphy stone, and he's still going hee. Motherfucker. Give him an inch, and he wants a mile. What the hell does he want? Does he actually expect us to go begging him? So what do we do now? As soon as the words fell, everyone looked at each other in dead silence. A moment later, the middle-aged man from earlier finally broke the deadlock. What else can we do? Just wait to die, I guess. Everyone, go prepare. We don't have any specific information about this zombie volcano. All we know is that there will be a lot of zombies. We'll just have to wait for it to erupt and figure it out then. In the zombie basin, the Hengxing was speeding through the night. I sat in the control room, looking at the private messages sent by those level 9 captains over the train radio, chuckling softly without replying. I wasn't in a hurry anyway. Let's see who gets anxious next. None of them could leave the zombie basin, so we could just take our time playing this game. Right then, a private message from Air Dan came through the train radio. Boss Mang, is the crisis this time really that huge? I only have a little over 300,000 copper ore. I don't know if it's enough. Send me your coordinates. I'll bring it over to you. I looked at Air Dan's message, thought for a moment, and replied, no rush. I'll contact you later. Just say the word if you need it. But Boss Mang, since I'm flying in the sky, I should be considered safe, right? Could the number of monsters really be so massive that they cover the entire zombie basin? I recalled that colossal cave with its exaggerated size, along with the many monsters I had never seen before, and replied, prepare for the worst-case scenario. The next moment, the enemy radar detected a level 6 train parked on a level 2 iron mine, mining ore. I frowned slightly, immediately pushed the control lever, changed the locomotive's direction, and charged straight toward this train. As I approached, the piercing sound of the train whistle blared continuously. At the same time, I sent a forced private message, stop mining. Hurry back to the Sheikh Plains. A massive disaster is about to break out in the zombie basin. You won't survive. After saying that, I sped past that level 6 train. The zombie basin and the Sheikh Plains were not the same. As long as you entered the zombie basin, you could join the train radio, even if you were a level 6 train. This meant that the level 6 train had clearly seen the news on the radio, yet still dared to mine here. They were truly too nonchalant. If we're talking about which train level has the highest survival rate in this crisis, it would actually be the level 6 trains. Before upgrading to level 7, level 6 trains could still return to the green zone. Over the next few hours, I continued to drive the Hengxing, speeding across the wilderness. I didn't encounter any more level 9 trains, but I did come across a level 3 copper mine. Although the current stockpile of copper ore on the train wasn't small, the zombie basin, while not as large as the Sheikh Plains, wasn't exactly small either. The probability of running into other level 9 trains was still quite low. I immediately stopped the train next to this level 3 copper mine. This was the first level 3 copper mine I had encountered in the zombie basin. Copper ore was much rarer than iron ore. All the residents drank a bottle of cola, then grabbed their pickaxes, got off the train, and resumed mining. We'd mine as much as we could. In the control room, I looked at the resource dashboard on the screen. 4,341,000 units of iron ore. 2,815,000 units of copper ore. I was just a little short on iron ore to upgrade to level 9 armor. With the level 10 zombie repellent device in hand, I wasn't afraid no matter how many zombies there were, unless a chain reaction occurred. But besides the zombies, there were still many monsters in that colossal cave that I had never seen before. And as for why the village shook every time night fell, I still hadn't figured that out. That wasn't a commotion caused by digging tunnels. Perhaps it was just as Zhang Yiren said. It was the vibration emitted when something utterly terrifying was breathing. If so, this monster's cardiopulmonary function was simply too good. It only needed to take one breath a day, and that one breath was enough to last the whole day. Many captains couldn't sleep tonight, mainly because no one had any specific information about this crisis. All the news came from the Hengxing, and panic was like a plague, spreading incredibly fast. On a crowded commercial street, if just a few dozen people at the front started screaming and turned around to run, every single pedestrian on the street would instantly be infected by the panic and run along with them, even if the people in the back had absolutely no idea what was going on. Level 8 Mechanical Train, Qiuxing. I think there's actually no need to panic too much. Level 8 Mechanical Train, Qiuxing. After all, a lot of people in this area came from the Shay Plains. Everyone has a drill accessory. When the time comes, we can just hide underground. Level 7 Mechanical Train, Tongyi. Are you only calculating the consumption of the oxygen generator? What about food, water, and other daily living accessories? Level 7 Mechanical Train, Tongyi. My train has a fixed daily consumption of 3,800 units of iron ore. Level 7 Mechanical Train, Tongyi. And there's almost no or underground in the zombie basin. Calculate how long your iron ore can keep you hidden. Level 8 Mechanical Train, Qiuxing. Hiding for a month or two won't be a problem. Level 7 Mechanical Train, Tongyi. And what about after 2 months? Level 8 Mechanical Train, Qiuxing. Wait to die. Level 7 Mechanical Train, Tongyi. Drill. I silently prayed for those who were preparing to hide underground. My underground movement speed was extremely fast, but that was because my drill accessory had reached level 50. Even so, I didn't dare hide underground. The only way to deal with this was to slaughter all those monsters. You can hide for a while, but can you hide forever? Are you never going to mine again? Just purely hiding? And other people's drills were level 3 at best, with an underground movement speed of only a few dozen kilometers per hour. Trying to hide with that kind of speed? Honestly, I didn't believe those zombies wouldn't know how to dig, especially since these zombies were dug up from underground in the first place. They were clearly smarter than normal zombies. They even knew how to use steel plates that could block radar to cover the sides of their tunnels and move stealthily. Even so, I still sent a pin message to the train radio. Level 7 Mechanical Train, Hengxing. Anyone willing to follow me, send a private message immediately. Level 7 Mechanical Train, Hengxing. Hand over 2/3 of the iron and copper ore on your train to me, and I will send you private coordinates. Level 7 Mechanical Train, Hengxing. There is a very high chance I can protect you and help you survive this crisis. At the very least, I can guarantee the survival of the captain and your core crew. Level 7 Mechanical Train, Hengxing. If the situation gets too bad, you can directly join my train. Perhaps it was because the disappearance of the 2 level 9 trains from the zombie basin made people even more panicked. Or perhaps it was because I was the first to discover this zombie volcano, and I always kept my word in trades. At the same time, I was at the top of the Super Effect leaderboard, so the number of people who privately messaged me was not small at all. The first one was Erdan. You should have said this earlier, brother. Give me a bottle of cola, and I'll remotely trade my iron and copper ore to you. I'm relying on you to protect this life of mine. Over 10 minutes later, a total of 14 trains had completed their trades with me, collected 2.8 million units of iron ore and 2.1 million units of copper ore. The zombie basin is surrounded by high ground, dipping lower toward the center. I set the coordinates at a high vantage point. Prestige and reputation, truly hidden assets. I chuckled, looking at the resource count on the control panel. This 2.8 million iron ore alone bumped the train's total iron reserves up to 7.14 million units. Just a little more to cover the deficit, and we'll be all set. Consider it done. 10 hours later, the sun dipped below the horizon, dyeing the sky a deep crimson. All residents were recalled to the train. The Stellaris set off, charging straight into the deepest part of the zombie basin. I had to see for myself just how far these zombies had progressed. In the past 10 hours, we mined another 2.2 million units of copper ore. 3,000 residents working together, plus stumbling upon a rare level 3 copper mine, made our efficiency skyrocket. This 2.2 million was the direct result. Having a massive population definitely has its perks. Not to mention, half of the newly captured survivors were still locked in the freezer, yet to be put to work. There was still a small fraction of the level 3 copper mine left unmined, but there was no time to worry about that now. The unease in my chest was growing stronger. I needed to check on the zombies' progress first. It wasn't a short distance, but the train was fast enough. In less than an hour, we reached the deepest zone. The enemy hunting radar clearly showed over a dozen trains gathered here. They were obviously here to scout the situation, but unfortunately, their radars weren't strong enough. Moreover, there were 7 or 8 trains moving underground, their high-speed drills continuously carving out tunnels. No, my expression suddenly changed. One of them was about to crash right into the tunnel the zombies had dug earlier. That train's radar couldn't detect the zombies ahead at all. It was still foolishly drilling straight toward them. I immediately opened the train's comms and forced a private message through. Stop. There are zombies ahead. Run now? But it was too late. Both sides broke through the final layer of earth and collided. That train was almost instantly dragged straight into the tunnel, swarmed by countless zombies. At this moment, I finally understood why Zhang Yi designed the script so the male and female leads never met. A lot of times, meeting face-to-face isn't necessarily a good thing. Like right now. The tunnel dug by the zombies was much larger than the one dug by the train. But in the very next second, a deafening tremor echoed from deep underground. Immediately after, countless violent blasts of air surged from the subterranean cavern, shooting up through the zombie tunnel and blasting straight into the train's newly dug path. Countless cracks instantly spiderwebbed across the surface. In the blink of an eye, a sinkhole about 2 meters wide formed on the ground. Then, ferocious geysers of air erupted skyward, blasting hundreds of zombies hundreds of meters into the air. But that was only the beginning. Scoured by the violent air currents, the sinkhole rapidly expanded. In a flash, its diameter swelled to dozens of meters, and it still wasn't stopping. More and more high-level zombies were spewed into the sky. In an instant, a putrid stench hit my face, and pale yellow dust blanketed the entire sky. Countless zombies erupted endlessly from the earth like a geyser. And it wasn't just zombies. All sorts of monsters I had never seen before appeared as well. The numbers were vastly higher than my initial estimate of a few 100,000. In just a few short seconds, nearly 10,000 monsters had surged onto the surface. Of the dozen or so trains scouting the surface earlier, 4 couldn't react in time and were swallowed by the abyss. Then they were blasted back into the air, only to be immediately swarmed by monsters that latched onto their carriages and launched a frenzied attack. The remaining trains scattered in absolute terror, fleeing in every direction. The moment the first crack appeared on the ground, I activated the cloud-leaping rabbit wheels, leaving the area and flying straight toward the preset coordinates. Air Dan and over a dozen other trains that had accepted my protection were waiting there. It had already erupted. I was a bit dazed. I leaned out the sunroof, looking back with my own eyes at the countless zombies still being spewed into the air. In just a few dozen seconds, the ground had turned pitch black, completely blanketed by zombies. There was even a bat about 2 meters long. Its body wasn't huge, but when fully extended, its wingspan reached 6 or 7 meters. The enemy hunting radar showed this bat was level 9. A level 9 magnetic bat, probably because I was flying in the air. The magnetic bat that had just been blasted out of the ground hovered in midair and let out an ear-piercing screech. Then, with terrifying speed, it dove straight toward the Stellaris, not even glancing at the trains fleeing on the ground. Naval guns, prepare to fire. I pulled myself back inside, sat down in my seat, my voice dropping low. The 10 Doomsday naval guns on the roof slowly swiveled, waiting for the level 9 magnetic bat to enter the enemy hunting radar's range to instantly lock on and fire. This magnetic bat's speed was insane, even surpassing the Stellaris equipped with the cloud-leaping rabbit wheels. The distance was closing at a terrifying rate. Lines of alerts rapidly flashed on the screen. Out of range. Cannot lock on. 9,000 meters remaining. Out of range. Cannot lock on. 5,000 meters remaining. Out of range. Right then, the pursuing magnetic bat suddenly let out another piercing screech. Its massive wings flapped violently, and from its body, 30 to 40 baby bats shot out, darting toward the Stellaris at an even faster speed. And every single one of those baby bats was a level 9 monster. In an instant, nearly 40 level 9 monsters simultaneously locked onto my train. I stared at the control screen, my face turning grim. The enemy hunting radar clearly showed that this was one of the level 9 magnetic bats' abilities. These baby bats would only exist for 5 minutes before dying. But for those 5 minutes, they were genuine level 9 monsters. Fire. The moment the bat swarm entered the enemy hunting radar's range. Under the AI's control, the 10 Doomsday naval guns rapidly predicted their trajectories and roared to life. Boom, boom. Level 9 artillery shells formed a continuous chain in the sky, blanketing the bat swarm. Although these bats were incredibly fast, their defense was weak among level 9 monsters. It practically only took one shell to obliterate them. In just one brief round of crossfire, dozens of level 9 baby bats were shot down. But in the very next second, the level 9 magnetic bat behind them suddenly threw its head back and let out another ear-splitting shriek. Its wings burst into fierce flames, and its entire body shot toward the Stellaris like a living missile. In the blink of an eye, it closed in on my train. Those razor-sharp claws were practically scraping the carriage's outer armor. At that exact moment, the train's external loudspeakers suddenly flashed red, their surfaces vibrating violently. Instantly, the level 9 magnetic bat that was about to ambush the Stellaris let out a cry of agony, hastily turning around and fleeing. Phew. In the control room, I let out a soft sigh of relief. Not daring to waste a single second, I shoved the throttle to the max, charging straight toward the preset coordinates. By now, the monsters erupting from deep underground had begun rapidly spreading in all directions. As for that level 9 magnetic bat that just fled, the level 10 super effect of the loudspeakers had the ability to emit ultrasonic waves. The higher the grade of the energy stone consumed, the higher the frequency of the ultrasonic waves produced. I had never used this effect before. This was my first time testing it, but the results exceeded my expectations. Bats naturally use ultrasonic waves for echolocation and hunting, making them extremely sensitive to high-frequency sounds. Before the apocalypse, ultrasonic pest repellers were proven to be highly effective at driving away bats. Except, those were pre-apocalypse bats. As for these post-apocalyptic monster bats, I wasn't entirely sure how effective it would be. This was just the first trial, but it seemed to work pretty damn well. I glanced at the control panel. The remaining iron ore was at 90,000 units. The locomotive's armor had reached level 9. Earlier, I had consumed 7 million units of iron ore in one go. I upgraded the armor of the first 14 carriages to level 9. Only Uncle Lee's production carriage number 15 was still stuck at level 8. An hour later, I successfully arrived at the designated coordinates. 14 trains were already waiting there. I slowly piloted my train down, landing right in front of them all. This was a high vantage point on the edge of the zombie basin. It was temporarily considered safe, with no zombies or monsters attacking yet. The moment the train stopped, the train captains immediately swarmed over, panic written all over their faces. Boss Mang, can we really survive this? What do we do now, Boss Mang? I didn't answer. I just waved my hand, signaling them to back off, before exiting the control room from the other side. Biaozi and the others followed. Standing on the hillside, leaning on my cane, I looked toward the zombie basin. The distance was too great. The enemy hunting radar could barely scan anything, and the naked eye couldn't make out the details. But I could still see a pitch-black mass of monsters spreading in all directions, like ink bleeding into a tissue. Moreover, their numbers were constantly increasing, far exceeding my initial estimate of a few 100,000. Among them, the primary monsters were still zombies. But there were also all sorts of other monsters, in the air, on the ground. Oh wait, underground too. Up in the air, I saw a giant earthworm, 4 or 5 meters wide, continuously leaping out of the ground and diving back down, like a fish breaching the ocean surface. That was a level 8 monster. With that kind of speed, I didn't believe the trains hiding underground could escape it. Earlier, I had said that the way to resolve this crisis was to slaughter every last monster. But looking at it now, I was wrong. There was simply no way to completely resolve this crisis. The monsters would just keep spawning endlessly. The only thing we could do was clear out the high-level monsters, and then, for a very long time, we'd be forced to coexist with the remaining monsters, mining or while fending off their attacks. This area would eventually become just like the Mount Kunlun area, a a paradise for monsters. I didn't know how long the zombies had been digging underground. Perhaps the current zombie basin was the true, complete form of this region. After all, copper ore was limited. Even if we pooled all the copper ore from every train, it wouldn't be enough to wipe out all the monsters here. If this region survived this crisis, it would turn into a Hell's Cape, much like Mount Kunlun. I stood at the edge of the hillside, leaning on my cane, as lines of messages on the train comms continuously scrolled past my eyes. Most of it was sheer panic, and the names of some trains went dark the moment they sent their messages. I paused for a moment, then resent that message to the public channel and pinned it to the top. Hand over 2/3 of your train's iron and copper ore to me. I will send you private coordinates and provide protection. Then, I turned to look at the train captains behind me, my voice low. All of you, return to your trains. Stay here. I will protect you. Just follow orders. No running around. Later, when the monsters attack, you guys handle the stragglers. Leave the rest to me. Currently, the train had 6.79 million units of copper ore. If I used it all to craft level 9 artillery shells, I could make nearly 40,000 rounds. Boss Mang. Dan stepped forward, his face grim, his voice hoarse. I'm afraid a lot of people are going to die this time. The number of monsters is just too massive. There are even more than in the Mount Kunlun area. In an environment like this, it's incredibly hard for trains to survive. And there are no yellow zones connected around the zombie basin. Ahead is a blue zone, behind is a green zone. We can't advance, and we can't retreat. There's nowhere to even hide. Even if we make it through this, mining or later is going to be a huge problem. If the trains don't get enough resource replenishment, we'll perish on our own without the monsters even having to lift a finger. Yeah, I gave a slight nod. It's fine. At the very least, I can guarantee your survival. Don't worry. I believe you. Dan had a complex expression, hesitating to speak. In the end, he said nothing more, just turned and walked back to his train. He knew Boss Mang's train could definitely hold out. The worst-case scenario was simply abandoning his own train to join Boss Mang's. But he didn't want it to come to that. He understood perfectly well that if he joined Boss Mang's train and snagged a management position, his future prospects would undoubtedly be better than on his Azure Dragon. It was just that he loved the thrill of exploring serendipitous maps on his own. Once he joined Boss Mang's train, he'd practically lose all chances to go exploring in the future. That made him feel like he'd be losing a lot of the fun. The zombie volcano began erupting from the center of the basin, rapidly spreading in all directions. Most of the trains hadn't been affected yet, and were currently scrambling to flee toward the edges of the zombie basin, the high ground. Only a few unlucky trains happened to be mining near the center of the basin, or a few trains that got swept up because they wanted to verify the news with their own eyes and couldn't retreat in time. Deeper. Go deeper. In the control room of a level 8 armored train deep underground, a pale-faced man. His lips bloodless and white, his eyes completely bloodshot, frantically shoved the throttle to the absolute max. The train plummeted straight down into the depths of the earth at an almost perpendicular angle. On the enemy hunting radar, a level 9 giant earthworm was rapidly closing in from behind. His drill was only level 5. His underground movement speed was about 80 kilometers per hour. Meanwhile, the speed of the monster behind him displayed on the screen had reached 300 kilometers per hour. The distance was closing at a terrifying rate. It was estimated to catch up in just a few seconds. But he had no other choice. When the crisis erupted, his first reaction was to dive underground. Except, not long after he went under, the giant earthworm plunged in after him, in relentless pursuit. He thought about rushing back to the surface, but the enemy hunting radar showed the ground above was densely packed with red dots. There was simply no escape. The only thing he could do was keep going deeper underground, desperately trying to shake the monster off. He even pulled out 2 Murphy stones and smashed them straight into the drill. If it weren't a matter of life and death, he would never have done something so insane. But it was still useless. Seeing the level 9 earthworm about to catch up, a vicious glint flashed in the man's eyes. The Doomsday naval gun on the carriage slowly began to boot up and swivel. The moment the earthworm burst through the dirt, closing in right behind him, a level 9 Doomsday naval gun instantly roared to life, firing level 9 shells as if they cost nothing. He had used a Murphy Stone to upgrade a Doomsday naval gun to level 9. Even though his energy shield was only level 7, his offensive firepower was absolutely nothing to scoff at. Since he couldn't run, the only option left was to fight for his life. The copper or he usually couldn't bear to spend, he now threw out completely without a second thought. Being alive with your copper or completely drained, that was a tragedy. But being dead with your copper or still unspent, that was an equally bitter tragedy. Boom. Deep underground. In a corner no one paid attention to, this level 8 armored train was locked in a death match with the level 9 earthworm monster. It was just that the distance was too close. If they were on the surface, relying on the train's speed to kite it at all costs, the chances of winning wouldn't be low, provided, of course, that the earthworm stayed on the surface. But right now, they were underground. Just as the train managed to attack, the earthworm opened its massive, blood-red maw and swallowed the rear carriages whole. The monster was bombarded by heavy firepower, its head blasted to a pulp, flesh and blood splattering everywhere. Yet, relying on its momentum, it swallowed the entire armored train from tail to head right into its belly. Crash! That was the sound of the energy shield shattering, followed by the crunch of armor being crushed, accompanied by the despairing screams of countless survivors. And then, immediately after, was a ferocious explosion of fire erupted from within the earthworm monster's belly. The monster, coiled up to digest its meal, suddenly blew apart into dozens of pieces. Flesh, blood, and shrapnel blasted all over the cramped tunnel. This was the sheer destructive power of a train's self-destruct sequence. From this day forward, this level 8 armored train was officially wiped from the zombie basin. And that level 9 earthworm monster was buried right here alongside it. A few minutes later, the tunnel gradually collapsed, completely burying all traces of the battle. For a very long time, no one would know what had happened here, nor would anyone ever come to take a second look. Perhaps many years later, another train would accidentally drill through the earth and pass by this very spot. These so-called trains were, in reality, mobile shelters. The person with the most power on every train was the captain, who also served as the train's representative. But a train didn't just house the captain, it also carried a massive number of survivors. The destruction of a single train usually meant that nearly 1,000 people, or even more, were forever buried in the apocalypse. Don't fly. Don't drill underground. Don't fly. Don't drill underground. Messages like these rapidly spread across the train comms. It didn't take long for many trains to realize that airborne monsters prioritized attacking flying trains, and subterranean monsters prioritized hunting trains hiding underground. As long as you stayed on the surface, theoretically, you only had to face zombies and running monsters. But in an instant, the entire zombie basin descended into chaos. All the trains simultaneously fled across the surface in every direction. Very quickly, everyone discovered that when there were no targets left underground or in the air, both the airborne and subterranean monsters would prioritize targeting the trains running on the surface. Which son of a bitch said not to fly or drill underground? Damn it. In the control room of a level 7 armored train, a pale young man with bloodshot eyes stared at the scene before him in absolute despair. Behind him was a zombie tide surging like a raging sea. Ahead, 2 giant earthworms burst from the ground to attack his train. Above his head, a level 9 rotting eagle shrieked, diving down with razor-sharp talons bared. There wasn't a single shred of hope left. He had absolutely no idea how to survive this. Originally, he only had to deal with the zombie tide behind him. But when all the trains crowded onto the surface, he ended up facing monsters from 3 directions: the surface, underground, and the sky. Even a god couldn't save him now. Fuck it. With despair in his eyes, the young man flipped open the cover of the self-destruct button and slammed his hand down. Just as he was about to hit confirm on the screen, boom, boom, a barrage of artillery shells flew in from afar, directly striking the level 9 rotting eagle diving from the sky, along with the 2 earthworms that had just breached the surface. Almost instantly, those level 9 monsters were critically injured and crashed heavily to the ground. The young man's hand froze for a split second. His train seized the opportunity to surge forward. Immediately after, another volley of shells rained down, completely blowing the heavily injured monsters to pieces. Only then did he see a flying train land heavily beside him. At the same time, his train comms received a forced private message. Stellaris, head toward these coordinates. Right on the mountain ahead. Hand over 2/3 of your train's copper and iron ore to me. It was him. The young man was stunned for a moment. Then, without any hesitation, he immediately ordered his subordinates to haul over the supply crates. He placed them on the scale that was slowly materializing in front of him, then picked up a cigar from it. Stellaris, have a cigar. Calm your nerves. Looking at the cigar in his hand, the man suddenly burst out laughing. He stuck his head out the window. He looked toward the Stellaris, which had just touched down and was now charging in reverse, straight into the zombie tide behind them. His eyes were brimming with the sheer relief of surviving a disaster. Overwhelmed with emotion, he shouted at the top of his lungs, "Brother, thank you." This was the most expensive cigar he had ever bought in his life. It was also the best-tasting cigar he had ever smoked. I survived. At the edge of the zombie basin, an endless, pitch-black tide of zombies was madly rushing toward a small hill ahead. Ahead of the zombie tide, over a dozen trains were fleeing in desperation, the exhaust pipes on their sides spewing blue flames as if fuel cost nothing. Amidst this scene, one train was charging against the current. It wasn't running away. Instead, it was continuously accelerating, plunging straight into the zombie tide. That train was the Stellaris. I sat in the cockpit, calmly watching the dense, pitch-black zombie tide hundreds of meters away, then pressed a button on the control panel. The next moment, 10-meter-wide saw blades extended from both sides of the train, spinning at extreme speeds, their surfaces crackling with purple-blue lightning arcs. The groove drill at the front of the train also extended, spinning wildly. The speed of the zombie tide was even faster than I had anticipated. In less than 2 hours, the trains in the center of the zombie basin had completely fallen. The zombie tide began surging up to attack the higher hills surrounding the area. The zombies in front of me were currently massing right below the coordinates I had chosen, at the foot of that small hill. Their numbers were absolutely colossal. My trip down the mountain this time was to clear out those zombies and protect the other trains holding the line on the hillside. As for the train I had just casually saved, I didn't pay it much mind. I had casually saved quite a few trains already. Some obediently handed over their iron and copper ore, while others completely ignored my messages. The names of those trains that ignored me, I had memorized every single one. I didn't remember who gave, but I remembered very clearly who didn't. By now, the outer armor of production carriage number 15 had also been upgraded to level 9. It was safe to say that every train in the zombie basin could potentially be destroyed, except for mine. At worst, all the other trains would be wiped out, leaving mine as the sole survivor in the entire basin. The good news, no one would be left to fight me for ore. The bad news, I'd be like a beacon in the dark, drawing the attention of every single monster. Mining later would be incredibly difficult. Right now, the Stellaris, driving against the current, officially slammed into the zombie tide. The blades spun ferociously. Any low-level zombie that touched them practically melted instantly, turning into minced meat spraying through the air. As for the high-level monsters, before they could even get close, they were locked onto by the Doomsday mech cannons and shot down with pinpoint accuracy. I couldn't bear to use the earth-shattering missiles. They weren't suited for this situation. 4 low-level threats, the blades and drill were enough. 4 high-level ones. Using the Doomsday mech cannons was much more cost-effective. Earth-shattering missiles were just too expensive. The only good news was that I still hadn't encountered a level 9 zombie. Even among level 9 monsters, their different body sizes determined the amount of artillery shells needed to kill them. Under the train's extreme speed, the 50-meter blades carried massive kinetic energy. They practically sliced through the zombie tide like a red-hot knife through butter, instantly tearing open a massive gap filled with fresh blood and minced meat. Immediately after, the Stellaris continuously charged into the zombie tide, slaughtering endlessly, wiping out zombies and any remaining high-level monsters. The flesh, blood, and dropped items were all sucked clean into the level 10 freezer by the high-powered magnet. This was both a crisis and an opportunity. Normally, it was rare to have this many monsters to kill, and the more monsters there were, the higher the chance of dropping good loot. By now, Nearly 20 trains had lined up horizontally on the hillside, parked halfway up the mountain, looking like a fortress wall of steel. The train captains sat in their cockpits, watching the Stellaris relentlessly slaughtering at the bottom of the hill. Their once despairing eyes now flickered with hope. The Stellaris was indeed incredibly strong, even stronger than they had imagined. These nearly 20 trains had their heavy machine guns and doomsday mech cannons locked onto the bottom of the hill, ready to fire at a moment's notice. The vast majority of the zombie tide had been cleared out by the Stellaris sweeping back and forth. Only a few stragglers managed to slip through and surge upward. They saw a few thousand small spiders rapidly crawling up the mountain. Their bodies were only about 30 centimeters wide, making them almost impossible to spot amidst the zombie tide. This was the third line of defense. It wasn't time for the steel wall to open fire yet, because the second line of defense had already appeared. It was the mechas. Over a dozen mechas stood right in front of the steel wall, charging forward in unison to meet the thousands of small spiders. Compared to trains, mechas consumed far fewer resources. Among them, 3 thunder mechas stood out prominently, towering several meters above the surrounding mechas like giants. Each wielded a massive warhammer. They didn't even need to swing them. Just a single stomp was enough to crush quite a few spiders. 2, 3. Zhang Yi piloted his thunder mecha in a rapid sprint, crushing a spider with every stomp. He could even clearly hear the sound of the spiders bursting. It felt incredibly therapeutic. The Stellaris' mechas were all present here, while the rest belonged to the other trains. I hate spiders. In the cockpit of her thunder mecha, Zhang Damiai's face was practically twisted in disgust. She screamed as she swung her warhammer, smashing swaths of spiders to a pulp. The sight of them bursting gave her major goosebumps. Even so, over a dozen mechas couldn't stop all the spiders and the stragglers forming a mini zombie tide behind them. But fortunately, they were all just low-level monsters. The high-level ones had already been wiped out by the Stellaris. Fire! 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 The steel wall formed by nearly 20 trains opened fire. Heavy machine guns and doomsday mech cannons unleashed a hail of bullets simultaneously. They mostly used burst fire, as the majority of their resources had been handed over to the Stellaris, leaving them with very little to spare. This mountain wasn't the only temporary refuge. At various high points around the edge of the zombie basin, many other shelters were forming. But those places didn't have the Stellaris charging the front lines, breaking the zombie tide, and clearing out the high-level monsters. So they barely lasted long. Very quickly, they were overrun and submerged by the monsters. Bursts of explosive fire erupted, and then everything fell dead silent. It wasn't that no trains wanted to flee toward the Stellaris. It was just that the zombie basin was in complete chaos right now, with monsters and zombies swarming every hill and valley. It was simply impossible to punch through the zombie tide to reach these coordinates. Boom, boom. With a barrage of artillery shells raining down, a train about to be swallowed by the zombie tide was saved by the Stellaris. Saving even one more was a win. I didn't say much, nor did I send a private message. Because this was a flesh train, it definitely wouldn't have any copper or iron ore. Except, this flesh train was pretty gutsy. Instead of retreating, it stuck close behind my train and started devouring the flesh and blood. But after devouring for a while, it realized the surroundings were completely empty. All the zombie meat and dropped flesh had been sucked clean into the freezer by the high-powered magnet. What was left for it to eat? Where's the zombie meat? Did you stash it all? You don't even use zombie meat. Why hoard it? Give it to me. I needed to upgrade my armor. I glanced at the message on the radio with a cold expression, too lazy to reply, and continued slaughtering through the zombie tide. But the more I ignored it, the louder that flesh train blared its horn. Its horn sounded completely different from an armored train's. It was like the screech of a bat, incredibly ear-piercing. I sighed softly. Could flesh trains really corrode a person's brain? Right after, I opened the radio and replied curtly, "Here you go." The next moment, a few artillery shells rained down. That flesh train instantly turned into a fireball, blasted into the air before crashing heavily into the middle of the zombie tide. About an hour later, the Stellaris slowly came to a halt. The surrounding ground was dyed red with countless chunks of flesh and blood. Not a single monster could be seen standing. At first, I was still collecting flesh and blood. After all, back in the ice and snow world, I had encountered places where it was needed. But later on, there really was no room left. I immediately discarded all the flesh and blood from low-level zombies and monsters, only keeping the meat from level 6 and above. No matter how many freezers I had, they couldn't handle being filled like this. After that, I piloted the Stellaris slowly up the hillside. By now, the train was entirely dyed red, its armor draped in minced meat, looking exactly like it had just crawled out of hell. All the dropped items were stuffed into the freezer. I had killed over 10 level 9 monsters alone, burning through a total of 1.1 million units of copper ore. I returned to the hillside, waving my hand out the window, signaling all the trains to hold their positions and absolutely not act rashly. Then, I left the train alone and walked up the hillside. The monsters in the area I was responsible for had been cleared out. But looking at the entire zombie basin, the number I had killed wasn't even a fraction of a tenth. Sweeping my gaze across the basin, countless pitch-black zombies were still relentlessly charging toward the other mountains, while the central area of the basin was completely devoid of monsters. Right now, the safest place was actually that center. The only problem was how to get there, because all 3 routes were completely blocked. I narrowed my eyes at the distant scene. In this zombie volcano eruption, aside from zombies, quite a few other monsters had appeared. But the strange thing was, they coexisted quite peacefully, completely ignoring each other. Normally, monsters of different species were highly territorial and would attack one another. For example, zombie tides frequently hunted other monsters to gather enough flesh and blood to fuel the evolution of the zombie king within the tide. But this wave of monsters was different. They coordinated with extreme order, and their objective was incredibly clear. Not a single one strayed. They were all gunning straight for the trains in the zombie basin. It was as if, I didn't say it out loud, but I recalled that village that shook once every night. The violent air currents that suddenly erupted from the massive cavern, blasting all the zombies onto the surface, combined with Zhang Yi's theory, and perhaps I needed to make another trip back to that village. Yaozi, get on the train. Very quickly, the entire guard squad returned to the Stellaris. I called all the train captains out of their vehicles, gathered them in one spot, and gave them strict orders. The monsters and zombies in this area have been cleared out. This place is temporarily a safe zone. If you want to live, don't run around. Dan, if anything happens, send me a message. I'll be right back. Understood? The group of train captains nodded repeatedly. By now, they had absolutely no doubts left about the Stellaris. Their life or death depended entirely on it. After that, the Stellaris didn't linger. It switched to the cloud-leaping rabbit wheels, took to the sky, and sped toward the village. Just as it took off, that level 9 magnetic bat shrieked and dove in from afar, turning into a golden blur and appearing right above the train in the blink of an eye. Its speed was too fast, it was simply impossible to lock onto. But at the same time, the train's external loudspeakers flashed red. The magnetic bat instantly stiffened for a split second. Just as it tried to turn and flee, it was locked onto by the Doomsday mech cannons. A deafening roar rang out. Minced meat splattered everywhere, and then it was completely gone. The dropped items and flesh were all sucked into the train. Level 9 monster meat was good stuff. It would definitely come in handy later. How the hell did he get back? On another mountain, a few level 9 trains, along with over a dozen level 7 and level 8 trains, were gathered. Facing the zombie tide rising like an ocean at the foot of the mountain, they were already starting to feel powerless. The biggest problem right now was that they didn't have enough copper or left. A burly middle-aged man jumped out of his train, his face full of anxiety, and sprinted over to a level 9 train. He looked at the middle-aged man in the cockpit and yelled, "We're almost out of copper ore. The zombie tide just keeps coming. Is the Stellaris coming to back us up or not? Didn't some train on the radio say he already cleared out the monsters on their mountain?" The middle-aged man replied hoarsely, his eyes still glued to the window, staring at the endless stretch of pitch-black zombies at the bottom of the hill. "I already told you. I offered him 200,000 units of iron ore from each of our level 9 trains to request backup, but he refused. He just replied with one word. Heh. Damn it. Keep raising the price." The burly man roared impatiently. Hoarding that little bit of iron or won't do us any good anyway. Just tell him straight up that there are over a dozen trains here, and we're all willing to give him iron ore. Tell him to hurry up and save us. There's no time left, the middle-aged man said through gritted teeth. I only have 3 level 10 Doomsday Mech Cannons. I only dare to use these 3. The others aren't level 10 yet, and the consumption is just too insane. All of your trains combined only have 4 level 10 Doomsday Mech Cannons. It's simply not enough. Right at that moment, the zombie tide surged over the peak of the mountain. The burly man's face paled. He immediately turned and sprinted back to his train's cockpit. The situation had deteriorated to the absolute worst. The zombie tide was pressing right up against the hillside. At this point, they could only prioritize killing the high-level monsters. They had to ignore the remaining low-level monsters. His energy shield was only level 8. He could afford to ignore those low-level monsters, but the lower-level trains were definitely going to die. Furthermore, with things escalating to this point, even if they survived, mining later would become a massive problem. It was as if these monsters had level 1000 target-locking radars implanted in their heads. They could directly pinpoint the trains and start hunting them down. They had absolutely no sense of territory. It was pure, unadulterated slaughter. In the blink of an eye, this mountain completely fell. The low-level trains were practically melted by the zombie tide in an instant. Thousands of zombies and monsters clung to every part of the trains. And once the energy shield shattered, it meant death was imminent. The sounds of trains self-destructing rang out one after another. In stark contrast, the few level 9 trains were still holding their ground amidst the zombie tide, frantically gunning down the level 9 monsters charging at them. They had collected all the copper ore from the surrounding trains, but it was still barely enough. Thank God. The burly man sat in his cockpit, looking at the zombies and monsters swarming all around him, even starting to climb onto his energy shield, and let out a soft sigh of relief. The situation was critical, but as long as his copper ore hadn't completely run out, there was still hope. These low-level monsters couldn't break his defenses. He just needed to focus on killing the level 9 monsters. But right at that moment, countless monsters began clinging thickly to the surface of the energy shield. The Doomsday Mech Cannon shells exploded against these low-level monsters, practically wasting their firepower. The gaps that were just blown open were instantly filled by other monsters swarming in. Out of 10 shells fired, only about 3 actually managed to hit a level 9 monster. Damn it! The burly man's face changed when he saw on the target-locking radar that 2 level 9 zombies were roaring and sprinting toward his train. He immediately shoved the throttle, wanting to accelerate hard and shake off all the zombies clinging to the energy shield. Without a solid grip, the zombies on the shield would be easily thrown off. However, the wheels were completely jammed by countless zombies and monsters, leaving the train practically stuck in place, making it incredibly difficult to accelerate. Delayed by just a split second, those 2 level 9 zombies lunged forward, slamming their heavy fists into the energy shield. The sturdy level 8 energy shield was almost instantly covered in cracks, on the verge of shattering. The burly man screamed in despair. He had thought about abandoning everything, ignoring the level 9 flying monsters, and just taking to the sky to escape. But there simply wasn't enough time to switch to the cloud-leaping rabbit wheels, nor was there time to drill underground. The energy shield completely shattered. A train's greatest advantage lay in its speed. Once it couldn't move, a train was practically synonymous with a steel coffin. The burly man didn't even have time to self-destruct. Right before he died, he stared blankly at the sky, hoping the Stellaris would appear riding on 7-colored auspicious clouds to pull him out of this desperate situation. On the train radio, many trains had said they were saved by the Stellaris. It was just that, even up to the moment of his death, he never got to see his 7-colored auspicious clouds. Boom, boom. In the sky above the zombie basin, the Stellaris was soaring. The Doomsday Mech cannons on the roof roared continuously, blasting apart yet another rotting eagle that lunged at it. I had lost count of how many level 9 flying monsters I had killed. While I was flying, almost every flying monster in the area prioritized locking onto me as their first target. Right then, I noticed a mountain not far away where about 7 or 8 trains were gathered. The hillside was already swarmed by a pitch-black mass of zombies and monsters. They clearly couldn't hold out much longer and were on the brink of annihilation. I frowned slightly, steering the train toward them, and first took a precision shot at a level 9 zombie. Then, I forced a message through to those trains: drill underground. Those trains clearly hesitated a bit, but ultimately obeyed, quickly extending their drills and burrowing deep into the mountain. Immediately after, I also piloted the Stellaris to drill underground. The moment I entered, the target-locking radar instantly showed 2 level 9 worm-type monsters rapidly charging to attack those trains underground. I engaged them right there in the depths, easily dispatching the 2 level 9 worm monsters, then immediately burst out of the ground and continued flying toward the village. For a short while, this place wouldn't be attacked by worm monsters from below. Hiding here was temporarily safe. I couldn't clear out all the monsters on this hillside. I didn't have the time or the ammo for it. Saving people doesn't give legacy points. In the cockpit, I glanced at the control panel, pursing my lips without a word. Trains taking in children increased legacy points because it was considered a sacrifice for the continuation of human civilization. So me burning copper or to save these trains, wasn't that also for the continuation of human civilization? A few dozen minutes later, I successfully arrived at that village. The Stellaris slowly descended, drilled straight into the ground, and continued its exploration. Very quickly, the L-shaped cavern appeared before my eyes again. By now, it was completely empty inside, devoid of any monsters. I didn't stop, continuing to press deeper. After drilling down over 20,000 meters with the level 50 drill bit, I successfully entered the massive cavern space ahead. Losing the ground's support, the train immediately went into a freefall, plunging straight into the depths of the cavern. But I quickly switched to the Cloud Rabbit wheels in midair, bringing the train to a hovering halt. This place. I looked around, my eyes flashing with shock. Actually entering this space and seeing it with my own eyes was completely different from the images on the targeting radar. It looked exactly like a giant heart. The cavern walls were covered in mangled flesh and blood, and the ground was littered with zombie limbs, likely torn off from them trampling over each other. Right in the center of this heart, a small red that was flashing. It was directly in front of the train, a few hundred meters away. It was a head. A zombie head about 50 meters wide, eyes shut tight, lying motionless on the ground. I glanced at the faintly blinking red dot on the targeting radar. The data displayed, monster info. Currently level 9. Complete form level, unknown. Right at that moment, the giant zombie head suddenly opened its eyes. It bounced a few times on the ground, spun around, and stared straight at the hovering planetary express. Its eyes were filled with a vicious glint before it opened its mouth and let out a furious roar. Roar. The deafening sound echoed through almost the entire zombie basin. Immediately after, a violent blast of air erupted from the zombie's mouth, shooting straight toward the planetary express. Caught in that terrifying gale, the hovering train was instantly slammed against the cavern wall, plummeting through the air. Fortunately, with the level 9 armor and level 10 permanent shock absorbers, the train didn't suffer any serious damage. Only the external attachments, like the loudspeakers and the heavy-duty electromagnets, had their durability instantly drop to single digits. Damn it! I stabilized the planetary express, keeping it hovering in midair, and chuckled as I looked at the giant zombie head. Just as I expected, this thing is the mastermind behind the zombie volcano this time. It's obvious that it's in a crippled state. The zombies and monsters outside must have been sent out to gather flesh and blood. Right now, every monster in the zombie basin is probably rushing back here to protect their king. Sure enough, Erdan's urgent voice quickly rang out over the train's radio. Brother Mang, all the monsters in the zombie basin suddenly retreated. They're all rushing toward the deepest part of the basin. In the next moment, I didn't hesitate at all. The Doomsday mecha cannons quickly locked onto the giant zombie head and immediately opened fire. Artillery shells carrying terrifying destructive power completely blanketed the target. The zombie head had no way to fight back. It just bounced wildly on the ground, trying to escape but to no avail. It could only howl in despair as hundreds of artillery shells rained down on it. Boom, boom, boom. Countless explosions rang out in succession. Everything went smoother than I thought. This zombie head had no other means of counterattack. Its only move was that violent blast of air from earlier, which was also what created the zombie volcano, but it clearly couldn't use it a second time. Even if it could, it wouldn't matter. It couldn't break through the Planetary Express's defenses anyway. Soon after, 2 lines of text appeared on the control panel screen. You have slain the level 11 Ancient Zerg, Giant Corpse King. Received 50 reputation points. I looked at the scene before me. The giant zombie head had been blown into minced meat in midair. All the dropped loot was sucked into the train by the heavy-duty electromagnets. I chuckled softly, then steered the Planetary Express away from the area. As the train burst out of the ground and flew back into the sky, sunlight shone down on the zombie basin. This place had finally returned to its original tranquility. That zombie head was the supreme commander of all the monsters. And with the supreme commander dead, this crisis naturally came to an end. Yeah, it's probably quiet now. I sat in the cockpit, lit a cigarette, and looked down at the zombie basin from above. The zombie tide and monsters had completely disbanded. They were no longer organized into an army, but instead scattered to claim their own territories. The good news is they won't attack trains as a legion anymore. The bad news is they're still alive and haven't disappeared. Right now, the number of monsters in the zombie basin has increased more than tenfold, and the number of level 9 monsters is 10 times higher than before. The difficulty of mining here in the future has significantly increased. But in exchange, the number of unclaimed mineral veins I could find would also be much higher. After all, not many trains had survived. On the train rankings, out of the 11 level 9 trains, only 3 were left. Among them were 1 flesh train and 2 mechanical trains. The number of lower-level trains destroyed was even higher. Nearly 60 to 70% of the trains had perished in this crisis. They simply couldn't escape in time. Land, sea, and air were all swarming with level 9 monsters. There was nowhere to hide, even if they wanted to. I steered the train to fly toward Erdan. I needed to rest for a bit. I hadn't slept in a long time. It was already noon, and I needed to find a place to take a nap. I was seriously exhausted. I didn't feel it during the continuous fighting, but the moment I relaxed, the fatigue washed over me like a tidal wave. About an hour later, Chun Meng piloted the Hongxing Hao and landed back on the hillside. The trains he protected suffered 0 casualties. Every single one of them maintained an absolute 0 death toll. Boss Meng. Erdan walked up to Chun Meng, who was standing at the edge of the hillside. His eyes were still dazed as he looked into the distance, muttering, "So, is it over?" I suddenly feel like the path I took before might have been completely wrong. I prefer exploring encounter maps, and I have a lot more experience doing that. I always thought that as long as I had enough attachments, I could combine them for stronger effects and deal with more dangers. If I just mined, the most I could do is craft the attachments unlocked after upgrading the train. There's no future in that. Erdan paused for a moment, then sighed. But looking back now, maybe I was wrong. If I had just kept mining and upgraded the plutocrat's energy shield to level 9. Then during this crisis, even without your help, Boss Meng, my life probably wouldn't have been in danger. You're wrong. Chun Meng leaned on his cane at the edge of the hillside, smiling faintly. He took out 2 cigarettes, handed one to Erdan, put the other in his mouth, and snapped his fingers. Xiao Ai, standing nearby, immediately brought her finger close to the tip of the cigarette, shooting out a small spark. He exhaled a long puff of smoke, stretched, and let the scent of gunpowder and blood mixed in the air fill his lungs. The plutocrat's energy shield is a blue-tier attachment. It can only be upgraded to level 8 at most. If you want to reach level 9, you absolutely need Mafe stones. You can't dig those up just by mining. You have to explore encounter maps, but you also have to mine. Besides, even if you had a level 9 plutocrat's energy shield, how many resources do you have to keep it constantly activated? And how are you planning to deal with those level 9 monsters? Chun Meng paused, his voice slow but firm. A train needs a lot of things to develop. The Hongxing Hao will have to face a lot of things in the future. I can't personally go to every encounter map. I don't have that much time. Moreover, if 2 encounter maps appear at the same time, it becomes a very difficult choice. He tilted his head and looked at Erdan. Are you interested in being the exploration captain for my train? You'd only be in charge of exploring encounter maps. You wouldn't have to worry about anything else. I can't do that. Dan shook his head helplessly. Boss Mang, a lot of encounter maps require the train captain to pilot the train themselves. If I join your train, I'll lose my qualification to enter encounter maps. No. Chen Mang patted Dan's shoulder, his eyes serious. Captain is just a title. You'll still be the captain of that Songlong Hao. It's just that in name, that Songlong Hao will become a subordinate to the Hongxing Hao. Your slaves will all belong to me. You won't have to worry about iron, ore, slaves, or upgrading. I will provide all the resources your train needs. You just need to be in charge of exploring encounter maps. Isn't this exactly what you're best at, and what you love doing the most? As for your train's development, you don't need to worry. The things you get from the encounter maps will all belong to me. Consider it. A vassal train. Chen Mang shrugged. Of course, I'm not forcing you. It's just a proposal. Think it over carefully. No problem. Dan immediately nodded, his eyes serious and resolute. Boss Mang, I think this proposal is great. This way, I can continue to stay with my mom while dedicating all my attention to exploring encounter maps. And I won't have to worry about iron ore anymore. I think this train development model suits me perfectly. You decided that fast? Chen Mang tilted his head slightly, a bit surprised. Actually, this was just a rough idea he had. It wasn't a fully fleshed out system yet. Initially, he hoped Dan would become a sort of traveling frog, usually out of sight, but bringing back a bunch of good stuff every time he returned. Because he noticed that, whether it was due to innate talent or pure luck, Dan always managed to stumble into all sorts of encounter maps. From the undersea labyrinth and the Tower of Babel, to digging up the eternal prison encounter map right in the zombie basin with a hoe, and even running straight into the zombie volcano. To put it nicely, he was exceptionally gifted. To put it bluntly, this guy was a walking jinx. Trouble followed him wherever he went. Chen Mang smiled. Honestly, this benefits both of us. From now on, you can pour all your energy into exploring encounter maps. Leave those slaves to me. You just need to bring your henchmen. You won't even need train cars. Just the locomotive is enough. Your henchmen can stay in the fridge in the control room. He paused for a moment. Think about it. With only a locomotive, wouldn't the resources consumed to upgrade the plutocrat's energy shield be drastically reduced? You'd directly create a small but elite train. Wouldn't that be great? That's great. Dan grinned, his eyes full of anticipation. For some reason, I feel like the knot in my heart all this time has finally disappeared. Then from now on, I'll officially call you Boss Mang. I'll go back and disband the train right now, then distribute all those slaves. No rush. Chen Mang shook his head. Go talk to my vice captain, Lao Zhu, later. Discuss the details with him. No problem. After Dan stepped back, the surrounding captains didn't dare to step forward either. Biaozi and the others were piloting their mechas, standing guard behind Boss Mang with cold expressions. They were clearly on guard against sneak attacks, so those people only dared to shout from a distance. Boss Mang, thank you for protecting us this time. If you ever need anything in the future, just say the word, and we'll definitely come to help. That's right, Boss Mang. That train over there is the one you saved, but refused to hand over the ore at first. We've already persuaded him. He handed over all his iron and copper ore. It's in the storage box on the ground. Well then, Boss Mang, we'll take our leave first. Wishing you smooth sailing. Very quickly, the dozen or so trains drove toward the hillside one after another, then scattered in all directions. This crisis had nearly wiped out all their assets, so everyone had to quickly find a safe place to continue mining. Chen Mang just waved his hand, saying nothing more. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but his resources seemed to have increased significantly compared to before the zombie volcano crisis erupted. Especially the copper ore. The more he used, the more he had. It was almost impossible to spend it all. Well, the main reason was probably because he had been extremely frugal with his resources. Standing there for a moment longer, he finally withdrew his gaze. Although the zombie volcano had ended, the zombie basin was now nothing but a desolate wasteland. This area was no longer suitable for survival trains to stay in. There were simply too many monsters. He had to upgrade to a level 9 train soon and leave this place, because this area was no longer suitable for mining either. It was just that, logically speaking, upgrading to a level 9 train should allow one to enter the blue zone. But for some reason, those level 9 trains still couldn't leave. Chen Meng returned to the control room, leaned back in his chair, and glanced over his hull this time. He had to admit, the harvest was indeed massive. It was true that the greater the danger, the greater the opportunity. The first and biggest harvest was resources. The entire train had been upgraded with level 9 armor, allowing it to move freely in this area. There were currently 810,000 units of iron ore left in the inventory, mainly because the level 9 armor upgrade had consumed quite a bit. As for copper ore, there were a staggering 5.12 million units left. Last night, he only had a little over 1 million. After the crisis ended, this number had skyrocketed. Such a massive amount of copper ore was enough for the train to use for a very long time. The second harvest was the reward for killing the level 11 giant corpse king, the ultimate boss behind this crisis. Actually, theoretically speaking, those few level 9 trains, and even some level 8 trains, could have killed this final boss. After all, this was a commander-type boss. It was just a head with almost no ability to fight back. As long as one could break through the zombie tide's battle lines, descend beneath the village, have a high enough level drill bit to avoid spending hours drilling 20,000 meters deep, and have enough strength to deal with and withstand level 9 monsters, they could absolutely kill the boss behind this crisis. And coincidentally, he met all those conditions. Oh, a prophet was also needed, and that was Zhang Yiren. It was Zhang Yiren's information and prophecy, combined with his own assessment of the environment, that led him to deduce that the boss behind this crisis might be beneath that village. As for why the village shook every night, the cause had also been found. It was that heart constantly beating. The heart was too big. It was unclear if it belonged to that head, but it didn't really feel like it. The proportions were completely off, after all. Perhaps it belonged to an even higher level giant zombie. After killing the level 11 giant corpse king, a total of 3 items dropped. First, a purple tier vehicle attachment blueprint, flowing light nitro booster. Second, a special item, skeleton key X1. Third, Mafe stones, a total of 15 pieces. Chen Meng looked at the 15 Mafe stones and sighed helplessly. This stuff was supposedly extremely rare, yet for him, it seemed to love popping out of the weirdest places. He almost forgot about Mengda. He wondered if Mengda had returned yet. Besides, there were still 30 Mafe stones in the undersea labyrinth waiting for him to collect. As for this purple attachment, the flowing light booster, it was a perfect fit for Erdan's train, aligning flawlessly with the plan in his head. This attachment was similar to the nitro booster, used to accelerate the train, but its special effect was that the fewer the train cars and the lighter the weight, the greater the speed boost. It perfectly matched his vision of a compact and elite exploration train. In fact, in his mind, Erdan was like a destroyer in an aircraft carrier strike group. In his future plans, the Hongxing Hao would be the core, surrounded by many such auxiliary trains to execute his orders. In the early stages, he could handle things single-threaded, but as his faction grew, the future would definitely require multi-threading, with many things happening simultaneously. When that time came, if he had to personally pilot the Hongxing Hao to resolve every single issue, he'd work himself to death. As for that skeleton key, Chen Meng's expression turned a bit strange. He had never seen a special item this absurd. He honestly couldn't think of any train that could use it. It was practically completely useless. Special item, skeleton key. Item effect, can unlock any marked existence. Each use has a 30-second cooldown. With this effect, he really didn't know what train could use it. Before a train changed classes, one of the craftable attachments wouldn't display its name. Once the class change happened, this attachment would automatically turn into a heavy firepower weapon attachment of the corresponding level, but at that time, the name displayed was unknown attachment, not a question mark. In other words, if a train developed normally, it would never need this special item in its entire lifetime. It was completely useless, but, coincidentally, he could use it. With a slightly strange expression, Chen Meng looked at the button marked with a question mark on the control panel. He gently tapped the key in his hand against the button. In the next moment, after the key emitted a flash of white light, the question mark on the button slowly faded, transforming into a large word, Armory. Chen Meng pressed the Armory button, looked at the display on the control panel, and was slightly stunned. Immediately after, A look of disbelief flashed in his eyes. He looked down at the key in his hand, couldn't help but kiss it, and laughed. Damn, you really are Daddy's little treasure. He carefully stored the key in a drawer. He wasn't sure if he'd encounter any other marked existences in the future, but he knew one thing very well. Anything marked with a question mark was absolutely top-tier loot. Armory can research, craft, and purchase attachment blueprints related to firepower or defense. Requirement: the train's AI assistant must be at least level 10. Each research, crafting, or purchase consumes merit points. Merit points can be exchanged using monster flesh and blood. What did the train have the most of right now? Flesh and blood. So much of it, in fact, that he had previously thrown away quite a bit of low-level monster flesh. Instantly, Chen Meng wasn't sleepy anymore. First, he placed the armory into Xiao AI's Armor Research Center. Then he had Biaozi and the others carry the fridge over and dump all the monster flesh inside into the furnace. Next, he steered the Hongxinghao back down the hillside. He used the high-power magnet to retrieve the monster flesh he had discarded earlier. He originally planned to leave the zombie basin quickly, but looking at it now, he could do a good deed before leaving. He might as well clear out some monsters for the remaining trains in the area. Other places didn't have this many monsters. The Mount Kunlun area had many high-level monsters. But in terms of sheer numbers, it couldn't compare to the rampant zombie tide here. Plus, the terrain there was full of rolling mountains, which was inconvenient. This place was just a basin, like a bowl. It was perfect. The harvest this time was truly bountiful. There were still countless dropped items in the fridge waiting for him to check. The train's foundation had been strengthened, yet another step. At this moment, on the mountaintop, Dan had called everyone on the Songlonghao out of the train. Standing on the train car, he looked down at his over 700 slaves with a complex expression. From now on, these slaves would no longer belong to the Songlonghao, but to the Hongxinghao. He finally didn't have to worry about the train's development and could wholeheartedly search for encounter maps. He couldn't even imagine how relaxing and joyful the days ahead would be. Being able to do what you love in the apocalypse was truly a luxury. Moreover, with the Hongxinghao backing him up, he didn't need to worry about upgrade resources. The Hongxinghao would shoulder it all. It was just that he still felt a bit guilty toward these slaves, like a bankrupt company forced to lay off its employees. Phew. After a long silence, Dan stood on the roof of the car, looking down at the slaves below, his eyes slightly red. He said in a hoarse voice, "We've been together for quite a while now. I like to think I've treated you all better than most other trains would have. I didn't let you go hungry, and I didn't let you freeze. But today, I have to say goodbye to you all. Starting today, the Songlonghao is officially disbanded. Everyone will be merged into the Hongxinghao. From now on, you no longer belong to the Songlonghao, but to the Hongxinghao. Boss Mang will be your one and only master. Do you all understand?" The slaves stood in the cold wind, looking at each other. No one spoke. After a while, a bold slave stepped forward, cautiously raised his hand, and asked, "Boss Dan, is this real?" "Of course it's real." Dan sighed. "Going to the Hongxinghao won't be like the Songlonghao. You all need to follow the rules more. Don't." Right then, he suddenly heard laughter. Before he could even figure out where the laughter came from, the sound spread rapidly, turning into the excited cheers of hundreds of people. "Thank God! Thank God!" A male slave from the Songlonghao dropped to his knees, arms spread wide. His eyes filled with excitement as he shouted, "We finally get to join the Hongxinghao. Fragrant bread, ice-cold Coke, and pork stew with glass noodles. Here I come. Ha ha ha. I never thought I'd see this day. Boss Mang, do you still remember me? I swore my loyalty to you the first time we met. I'm your most loyal slave." Next to him, two women hugged each other tightly, laughing and crying at the same time. "Stop crying, stop crying. I didn't expect such a happy surprise either. I heard they don't call them slaves on the Hongxinghao, they call them residents. And you can earn Hongxing tickets to buy all sorts of things in the resident store." In the crowd, a slave from the Songlonghao ran up to Biaozi and the others with an anxious look, excitedly saying, "Do you guys remember me? I was the one who said I wanted to help you blow up car number 2 of the Songlonghao back then. Does that count as a merit for surrendering? From the very first time I saw the Hongxinghao, I felt like my destiny belonged to this train." Dan stood on the train car, his face expressionless. He had been feeling a bit sad about the parting, but seeing his slaves this thrilled, for some reason, he felt even worse. Was the Hangxinghao really that much better than the Songlonghao? After a moment of silence, he sighed softly. Whatever. It seemed it really was better. At the very least, he had never seen any train match the resident benefits of the Hangxinghao. He wouldn't think about it anymore. From now on, he'd just focus on exploring encounter maps. He jumped down from the car, looked at his vice captain and the henchman beside him, and lowered his voice. You guys have been with me for a long time now. Next. Don't worry, Boss Dan. The vice captain couldn't hide his excitement. He stood up straight and said loudly, even if we go to the Hangxinghao, I will absolutely never forget Boss Dan's kindness in raising and nurturing us. Us too. The henchman behind him nodded excitedly in agreement. The corner of Dan's mouth twitched. He stayed silent for a moment, then said gloomily, next, you guys are still following me. You're not going to the Hangxinghao. The smiles on everyone's faces instantly froze. After a while, the vice captain cautiously spoke up. Here's the thing, Boss Dan. Is there any chance you could strip me of my position first and turn me into a slave, so I can logically transfer to the Hangxinghao? In your dreams. Dan glared at him. Are the benefits on the Songlonghao really that bad? From now on, the Songlonghao is a vassal train of the Hangxinghao, specializing in exploring encounter maps. You guys work for me. You're not going anywhere. But Boss Mang already said he'll issue Hangxing tickets to you based on your merits. Don't think I don't know what you're thinking. Didn't you have your eye on those little actresses at the wedding last time? Do a good job, and you'll get your chance. Hearing this, the disappointed eyes of the vice captain and the henchman behind him finally lit up. Having Hangxing tickets wasn't bad either. At worst, they just wouldn't be official staff of the Hangxinghao. Consider them external contractors. At least with the Hangxinghao's protection, both their quality of life and sense of security would be vastly improved. Boss Dan, the vice captain continued seriously, I don't know what others think, but I know you gave me a new lease on life. In this life, my loyalty belongs only to you. It doesn't matter if I get Hangxing tickets or not. As long as I can follow you and work for you, I'll do anything. The henchman behind him looked at the vice captain's back with deadpan expressions. As expected of the vice captain, this ability to switch emotions was terrifyingly natural. At least they couldn't do it. I can always count on you. Dan patted the vice captain's shoulder, feeling a bit emotional. Truly worthy of being my right-hand man. All right, let's leave it at that for now. As for what comes next, wait until the Hangxinghao returns, and I'll discuss it in detail with Lao Zhu. Mainly the details about retrofitting the Songlonghao. Very soon, the Hangxinghao returned, stopping on the hillside once again. Captain Zhu. As the train slowly came to a halt, Lao Zhu stepped down from guard car number 7. Dan's eyes lit up, and he immediately went over to greet him. We're all colleagues from now on. I hope we can look out for each other. You're too polite, Boss Dan. Lao Zhu smiled, shook Dan's hand, and naturally threw an arm around his shoulder. Boss Mang already gave me a brief rundown on the train. Boss Mang currently has 2 plans for your Songlonghao. 1 is to continue using the current Songlonghao. 2 is to help you reboot. Reboot? Yeah, Lao Zhu smiled. By a stroke of luck, the train just acquired a rare train token. A train built with a rare train token can randomly receive 2 red-tier vehicle attachments. Furthermore, Boss Mang still has an incomplete S-rank mechanical class change quest from the Undersea Labyrinth. Boss Mang's idea is to help you build a new train, then he'll intentionally fail so you can successfully complete the S-rank mechanical class change quest. That way, you'll have S-rank potential, a special train skill of your choice, and an additional red-tier heavy firepower attachment. Which plan do you think is better? This. Dan's eyes trembled violently. He muttered in disbelief. A rare train token, plus S-rank potential? Is it really that extravagant? But if we do that, won't it consume a lot of resources? Even though that Songlonghao is just a locomotive now, quickly upgrading it back to its current level 7 will cost quite a bit of resources. This. Yeah, Lao Zhu nodded. Boss Mang already calculated it. It will indeed consume some extra resources, about over 1 million units of iron ore. But Boss Mang said, back when he was at the Iron Ridge Plains, 50,000 units of iron ore was enough to leave him breathless. But now, 50,000 units of iron ore is no longer an issue for him. He can make that back just by selling a few cigarettes. As the train grows, the efficiency of resource extraction will also continuously increase. Right now, over 1 million units of iron ore sounds like a lot, but when your train upgrades to level 10 later, or even level 15, this million-plus units of iron ore won't mean much at all. While your train's level is still low, rebooting is very suitable. Once your level is high, setting aside how many resources would be wasted, you might not even have this opportunity again. I obviously have no problem with it. Dan grinned, scratching the back of his head, feeling a bit embarrassed. I just feel like I'm being rewarded without having done anything. I haven't even done anything yet, and I'm already receiving such special treatment. It's fine, Lao Zhu smiled. Didn't Boss Mang use a missile to save your life? Just consider it evening the score. Dan froze. That counts as evening the score? Of course not. Lao Zhu shook his head. Just reminding you so you don't forget. How could I ever forget that? If you have no problem with it, then it's decided, Lao Zhu continued. Boss Mang also hopes your train will be a bit stronger, so you can get better rewards in the encounter maps later. Boss Mang has very high expectations for your train. However, Boss Mang only has one request. What request? Change the name of the new train. Change the name? It won't be called the Tsanglong Hao anymore. Change it to Traveling Frog. Dan hesitated. It's not that I can't, but does this name have some special meaning? I'm not sure about that either, Lao Zhu chuckled. It's just a little hobby of Boss Mang's. Were you just talking bad about Boss Mang behind his back? No, I was just mentioning his hobbies. It's perfectly normal. In the control room of the Hongxing Hao, Chun Mang looked at Mengda and Daba standing before him with a complex expression. He stayed silent for a long time, then looked at the 6 Mafei stones placed on the table. These 6 stones were the ones he had Mengda take to sell to high-level trains to gather iron ore before the crisis erupted. Mengda had indeed returned when the crisis happened. It was just that he had already gathered enough iron ore by then, so he didn't need it anymore. But what he didn't expect was that Mengda hadn't sold a single Mafei stone. To be precise, he did sell them, but he didn't deliver the goods. Chun Mang sighed, lit a cigarette, leaned back in his chair, and helplessly pointed at the fridge filled with iron ore next to him. All right, Daba, explain to me exactly what happened. Yes, sir. Daba puffed out his chest proudly. Reporting to Boss Mang, Mengda is the greatest black market merchant. On this trip, he brilliantly completed the mission, selling all 6 Mafei stones in exchange for over 1 million units of iron ore and other resources. Furthermore, relying on his identity as a black market merchant, he demanded the captain's pay up front. The moment he received the money, he randomly teleported away from the scene, leaving absolutely no trace behind. Within 18 hours, he flawlessly completed multiple transactions. Mengda, standing to the side, had initially thought Boss Mang's expression looked a bit off and worried he had done something wrong. But hearing Daba's words, he instantly gained courage, puffing out his chest proudly as well, waiting for praise. Chun Mang remained silent for a long time, his face expressionless, then gently tapped his knuckles on the table. Maybe it's a cultural difference between our races, but where I'm from, this behavior isn't called doing business. It's called highway robbery. When you went out, did you give them the name of the Hongxing Hao? No. Good. Don't ever give it in the future either. Later, go make a new black cloak and cover yourself up completely. Understood. You're dismissed. I'm going to rest for a bit. I'll call you guys later. Watching the two of them leave, Chun Mang sighed softly again, then waved his hand, signaling Xiao Fong, who was standing at the door, to step down as well. He could almost picture the entire scene. After all, a black market merchant was inherently a type of encounter. The first time he met Mengda, a few lines of text had appeared on the control screen. Doomsday encounter, black market merchant. Success rate uncertain. Any train can encounter a black market merchant, but only trains with inheritance points can purchase rare items from him. Attacking, detaining, or harming the black market merchant is strictly prohibited. Under these circumstances, who would doubt the background of a black market merchant? Since he was a black market merchant, selling a few Mafei stones was perfectly reasonable. Plus, they weren't allowed to attack or detain him. Although the price for doing so wasn't explicitly stated, no captain would dare take the risk. So, When those captains excitedly carried their storage boxes over to trade with Mengda, they only saw Mengda casually toss the boxes into his fridge, and then instantly vanish without a trace, leaving the captains standing alone in the cold wind, looking bewildered, completely failing to understand what had just happened. They'd probably rather believe the black market merchant had a stomachache and ran home to use the bathroom than believe he had absconded with the money. Honestly, the harvest this time was indeed massive. It seemed Mengda could frequently pull off stunts like this in the future. As long as he ran into high-level trains, he could basically rob the rich to feed the poor. As for whether he'd actually run into them, that was entirely up to fate. Excellent. Now Mengda could be considered a traveling frog too. Along with Erdan, he had 2 traveling frogs. He just needed to sit peacefully in the Hongxing Hao, and his traveling frogs would continuously bring back abundant resources. He tilted his head and looked at the train's control panel next to him. Thanks to the miraculous operations of the great black market merchant, the train's iron ore resources had directly shot up to 2.02 million units. With that, there was nothing left to hesitate about. He could absolutely help the Songlong Hao reboot right away. A long night is fraught with dreams. Getting the S-rank class change done early meant no one could snatch it. If he was a step too late and someone else took it, it would be incredibly frustrating. He immediately stepped out of the train's control room. As for that rare train token, it was an item dropped after a level 9 monster was killed. Farewell, old friend. Inside the Songlong Hao, Erdan stood in the control room, looking reluctantly at the attachments around him. At this point, all detachable attachments had been removed, such as the locomotive headlights, the car stereo, the 3-legged cat heavy machine gun, the rabbit cloud, and the nitro booster. The non-detachable attachments had to be left on the train. He took one last look at the control room, took a deep breath, and then selected Resign as captain on the train's crew panel, simultaneously waving a successor. In the next moment, the telepathic connection he shared with the train suddenly vanished. The once familiar control room also became foreign, bringing a sense of emptiness, much like when his mother passed away. When his mother died, he wasn't overly devastated. It wasn't until one day, coming home from work, he habitually opened the fridge and saw the dumplings his mother had made before she died, that he froze in place. It turned out, he was the only one left in this world. From that moment on, he started to love wandering everywhere, because he no longer had a home. All right. A flurry of thoughts flashed through his mind. Erdan stepped off the train, looked at Chun Meng, Lao Zhu, and the others beside him, and said with a hint of emotion, "I'm still a bit reluctant to part with this old friend." But as he hugged the train's AI assistant he had just uninstalled, he smiled. As long as this AI unit can still be removed, that's enough. At least I still have some company. Lao Zhu smiled without saying a word, just tossed over a rare train token and pointed to the storage box next to him. There's 1,000,000 units of iron ore in there, along with some wood and copper ore. Use it as you please. If it's not enough, just say the word. Erdan took a deep breath and immediately accepted the rare token. In the next moment, a locomotive formed by countless dashed lines suddenly appeared in midair. Those lines quickly condensed into a physical form, and the locomotive crashed heavily onto the ground. Having done this once before, he was naturally familiar with the process. Erdan immediately ducked into the control room, crafted all the craftable attachments, and then reinstalled all the attachments he had just removed from the Songlong Hao onto this new train. He used iron ore to upgrade all the basic attachments to level 5, then crafted 4 standard train cars to facilitate the train's upgrade. After the upgrade was complete, he continued crafting the attachments unlocked when the train reached level 2. Very quickly, the train reached level 3 and possessed 18 train cars. These train cars don't have any attachments. They're only used for upgrading. Later, they'll be completely swallowed up by the Planetary Express's geocore furnace. The train's upgrade conditions have been fully met. The total attachment level isn't an issue either, because the Azure Dragon's original attachments were all max level. The process officially advanced to the class advancement selection step. I'm heading out, Master Meng. Go on. The moment Erdan selected the S-rank mechanical class advancement mission, the walkie-talkie in Chun Meng's hand, which had been silent the whole time, finally started flashing red rapidly, emitting a series of beeps. He chuckled, Returned to the Planetary Express's control room, closed the door, and pressed the red button. Instantly, his vision went dark, and his body fell backward limply. 10 or so minutes later, the sound of propellers slicing through the wind echoed above the Planetary Express. A massive drone flew in from a distance and hovered in the air. Suspended beneath the drone was a square box. When the box dropped to the ground and opened, a robot slowly stood up. So this is what it feels like to be a robot. Chen Meng's consciousness was currently inside the robot's body. He tried moving around. It felt incredibly stiff. Is this the kind of body Xiao AI usually controls? He didn't hesitate. He walked briskly over to Dan and the others, casually flicking Lao Zhu on the head. Then, he headed straight for the last car of the traveling frog. This was the starting point of the maze Dan had set up. The end point was the control room. Stepping into the car, he sat cross-legged on the floor and waited patiently. His mission was very simple: fail to clear the stage. By doing so, he would forfeit the reward of 30 agate stones in exchange for S-rank potential for Dan's traveling frog. Between these two rewards, which one is more important depends on the person. To me, agate stones are useless. At most, they can only be traded for resources. For example, if I were to sell agate stones on the train's radio, just like Mona once told me, the most important part of a transaction is receiving the payment. Whether you actually deliver the goods or not doesn't matter at all. No one cares. As long as you get the money, it's a good deal. But now, agate stones have lost even that soul trading attribute. Half an hour later, Chen Meng stepped out of the control cabin, not receiving any consolation prize. Dan had just told me there might be a consolation prize, but it seems only pioneers get one. However, Dan successfully upgraded to a level 4 train. At the same time, he perfectly completed the S-rank mechanical train class advancement mission. Right now, he was choosing one of 3 special train skills. You could say that a rare train token combined with S-rank potential is basically a flawless start for a mechanical train. It's practically unrivaled. That's excluding me, of course, because my level 0 authority is basically a built-in cheat. Not everyone has that. As for that robot, Xiao AI had already taken it back to the Armor Research Center. Looks like Xiao AI can have 2 bodies from now on. Not bad. Just then, Dan came trotting over, looking thrilled. Master Mang, didn't you give me a purple tier attachment, the Golden Light Thruster? It just so happens that my Azure Dragon already had quite a few acceleration attachments. I took them all off. Just now, out of the 3 special train skills, I also picked one for explosive speed. When the special skill is activated, my train's top speed can reach 6,000 kilometers per hour. Chen Meng's mouth twitched slightly. That speed was absolutely absurd, almost on par with the top speed of many fighter jets. What's your red tier heavy firepower? Dan looked regretful. It doesn't have any direct use. It gave me an armed combat robot production line. Red tier. It can manufacture attack robots. Honestly, I don't even know how this counts as a heavy firepower attachment. It needs to be installed inside a spatial portal. Chen Meng narrowed his eyes slightly. Once you build it, put it in a train car and give it to me. I might have a use for it. I didn't say anything else, just looked at the train behind Dan. This must be the only level 4 train in the zombie basin. High-level zones don't allow low-level trains to enter, but building a train directly inside a high-level zone is a different story. The only catch is that a low-level train built this way can only stay in this zone. It can't return to lower-level zones. Next, Dan upgraded nonstop, bringing the train up to level 6 before stopping. To reach a higher level, specifically a level 7 train, he needed to clear at least one encounter map. Currently, the traveling frog hadn't cleared any encounter maps. In total, it consumed a small amount of wood, copper ore, and 1.8 million units of iron ore, most of which went into the armor. That's right. Chen Meng directly took out 6 agate stones and used them on the traveling frog, upgrading Dan's locomotive armor to level 9. Clean and efficient. Don't be fooled by the fact that it's just a single locomotive. It's tough enough. At least for now, armor is still superior to energy shields in every aspect. Not only can it directly withstand both physical and energy attacks, but it also doesn't consume extra energy. Nor does it run into situations where the shield fails to activate in time because an enemy wasn't detected. Upgrading the armor of a 17-car train to level 9 would require a massive amount of agate stones. But with just a single locomotive, the number of agate stones needed is vastly reduced. Go on. Shen Mang gave the traveling frog 200,000 units of iron ore and 1 million units of copper ore. Then, looking at Air Dan sitting in the control cabin, he waved and smiled. Hurry up and clear an encounter map. Get to level 9 soon, or you won't be able to keep up with me. Make sure to bring back some good stuff for me. Once you clear it, make a detailed guide. I'll make a trip there too and grab double the rewards. No problem. The train ahead, which consisted of just a single locomotive, had 5 three-legged cat heavy machine guns and 10 doomsday mecha cannons mounted on its roof. They were all dismantled from other trains. It had zero aesthetic appeal, looking more like an iron hedgehog. Among them, Shen Mang had also taken out 2 agate stones to upgrade 1 doomsday mecha cannon to level 10. It was powerful enough to obliterate level 10 monsters, and it possessed 2 super effects, including having energy consumption. You could say that although this train was small, in the current zombie basin, it was practically invincible. No train would dare to actively collide with it. It's just that cramming so many attachments onto the locomotive made it look quite cramped, especially on the sides. There were all sorts of thrusters, 7 in total. Who knows where this guy managed to collect so many of them? At this moment, the wheels had been switched to the Cloud Rabbit mode, with 14 thrusters simultaneously blasting out flames of different colors. The train instantly vanished over the horizon at breakneck speed. A few seconds later, the ear-piercing sonic boom finally reached them, leaving a long white contrail stretching across the sky.